session of August 13th, 2024. If we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Patrick?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If you could remain standing for a moment of silence. Today, it is with a heavy heart that I announce that we lost a great American, a great patriot, a great Yorktown resident who served on this board, and a great friend. Tony Grasso passed away this morning at 96 years of age. Yeah, it's a great loss, and our hearts and prayers are with the Grasso and Menton families at this time. So if we could have a moment of silence for Tony. Thank you. God bless. Yeah. Yes. So we'll start with our presentations with Support Connection. Kathy? Oh, let me just share also, anyone that's interested, the arrangements are Sunday from 1 to 5 at Yorktown Funeral Home for Tony, and there will be a massive Christian burial at St. Patrick's Church at 10 a.m. on Monday. So Sunday 1 to 5, Yorktown Funeral Home for the wake, and funeral service 10 a.m. St. Patrick's. Okay. Sorry, Kathy.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you very much for inviting me to come to the town board meeting. For those of you who don't know, I'm Catherine Quinn. I'm the executive director of Support Connection. And for the past 30 years, the town of Yorktown has greatly supported our efforts to offer free breast, ovarian, and other gynecological cancer support services to women and their families dealing with these cancers. What makes us unique is that all of our counselors have had cancer. We are very excited to announce that we have our 30th walk coming up on Sunday, October 6th, and we welcome everyone in the town to join us. And we just want to express our gratitude for being there for us all these years. We would ask at this time, as we've done, I guess, the past 5 or 6 years, if we would be able to put up some pink and teal ribbons, which are our colors, on the poles in town. If possible, if we could do that the last week of August, and we will take them down the day after the walk. So I'm just coming here to ask for your blessing, hopefully.
And you also have a golf outing coming up too, correct?
Yes, we
You're
do.
stealing my softballs.
I will tell you, I'm very proud to say that on September 9th, we will be having a golf outing at Salem Golf Club. And I'm very proud also to say we will be honoring Chief Noble. So he and the members of the police department are great community-minded people, but they have been very, very supportive of our work. So we thought it would be appropriate to honor him. And if anybody's interested in finding out more, you can go on our website, supportconnection.org, or call our office at 914-962-6402. So we've got a lot going on, and we're here for everybody in Yorktown who might need us and beyond, because we now do talk to people throughout the country. So if anyone knows anyone who needs our help, please feel free to reach out.
So, Kathy, I do have a question on signing up for teams, but I was remiss in not letting everyone know. We are also joined on Zoom by Councilwoman Luciana Hawat. Fortunately, I was sitting far enough away from Diana that she couldn't kick me, because she did tell me I was supposed to announce that earlier. If I wanted to have a team to walk, how do I do that?
Okay, so you could just go right on our website, and there's a banner on the website for the walk, and if you click on that, it will take you to everything there is to know about the walk, including how to form a team, or you could call our office. It's really quite easy. You just get together. You could create a team captain if you want, and get different family member, friends, people to join you. Also, even if you cannot walk with us at the park, at FDR Park on Sunday, October 6th, we invite people to walk in communities throughout the nation, actually. We always appreciate a donation if someone cannot walk as well. And I'm also let all the proceeds go to our free services. But if you call our office, we'll be more than happy to help too.
And I assume if,
Kathy, sorry, Supervisor. Kathy, I have a lot of friends who are survivors.
Oh, now do I
And
look
they're-
here? Oh, there you are, okay.
Yeah, I'm in the computer. I have some friends who are survivors, and when I show them your website, they actually found it to be super, super helpful and super resourceful. So I just want to thank you for that.
I'm glad to hear that. My counselors, as I said, they have all had cancer and they really know what it's like to go through this, and they're amazing people. And if we could help anybody, that's what we want to do. Thank you.
and then my last question is, say I wanted to support with a gift for your raffle. I could contact your office for that?
Oh, absolutely.
So anyone who would like to do that,
Anyone is-
any business, the local,
Yes,
can just
if
call.
anyone, we do have a large raffle at our golf outing. And if anyone wants to donate something, or like you have that perfect gift at home, but it wasn't perfect for you, and it's new, we will find a use for it.
Kathy, that's 962-6402.
Yes. Of the walk? Or- The golf outing is at Salem Golf Club.
Which is a
in
beautiful
North-
golf
yeah.
club, really nice.
Beautiful, really nice. Again, we're very excited to be honoring Chief Noble for all he does. The date of the golf outing is
September
Monday,
9th.
September 9th. Okay. You're welcome. And I request if we could put up the ribbons. I don't know, do we have to, will you
I
get
don't
back
think
with
we
it?
need
Can
a
you-
formal vote. Yeah, I, as a town supervisor,
Okay.
am more than welcome to say it,
Okay.
and I'm sure my
No,
board
no
agrees.
problem.
Okay,
No-
thank
no
you.
problem.
So we'll put it up if it's okay with you the last week of August, when we have volunteers who
Yep.
very good at doing that, like to do it, they're available. Well, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Again, I hope no one needs our services, but if you do, we are here. And all our services are not only free, but unlimited, from peer counseling to support groups to wellness programs. And Diana is on our board. She's a great member of our board, and we appreciate that. We're here, and this walk, we're hoping to raise $300,000 in honor of the 30 years.
Yes.
And every donation counts, no matter what it is. And I say that to people because I just share very quickly, in 2008, when we had the recession, we raised more money through $5 and $10 and $15 donations. And never hesitate to think that what you give is not enough. Everything counts. And I thank you very much for being a dear friend to us.
Well, we thank you
We
for all
thank-
you do.
Yeah, we thank you.
Yeah.
We thank you.
And one quick thing, because as we spoke about Jenny Menton, why don't you tell us a little bit about Fantastic
Yes.
Finds?
Okay, I'll be quick. And Jenny is part of this success story. There was a store called Discovery Shop in Chappaqua that was a upscale resale shop, and the donations went to the Cancer Society. And then back in about 2016, they decided it was not for them anymore. They didn't want to do it. Jenny Menton came up to me and along with Marilyn Ashikari, and said, I think this could be a wonderful thing for Support Connection. When I told my then board president, he said, you're out of your mind. You better leave now, because, there's like no room to fit in another thing on your plate or anywhere else. But I said, no, Jenny would not steer us wrong. So with a little bit of convincing and negotiating, we did take over the store. It's renamed it Fantastic Finds. It's at 400 King Street in Chappaqua. And again, people donate new or gently used items. Our volunteers are on board Monday through Saturday, 10 to 4, to sell. You could buy the most beautiful things there for 1/3, 1/4 of the price. So if it wasn't for Jenny, made that happen, and her friend Marilyn. And I'm eternally grateful, because it's helped us raise much needed funds through the years. And if anyone ever has things that they want to donate, again, please call our office, and we will make an appointment, or if you want to go shopping, it's a great place. So thank you. I didn't want to take up all this time, but I'm extremely grateful.
The work you do is worth this time, trust me.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy.
all. Okay.
Did a great job, Kathy.
Thank you.
Mr. Belfour.
I can.
Hello. Good evening. Ken Belfer tonight wearing, or this part of tonight anyway, wearing the hat that I won't be wearing that much longer as chair of the Yorktown Community Housing Board.
Actually, Ken, we have not voted on that yet, so don't count your chickens before they're hatched.
Well, I'll make sure I say things that are ruffle your feathers enough that you're definitely gonna.
Ken, I've been sitting here for too many years for that.
Okay, we have a presentation that I will be doing part of and Sarah will be doing part of. So I will start us off. And some of this is answering questions that have come up previously. But I really wanted to start with sort of our recap because it's been a while since we've done a formal presentation of the Housing Board and who we are and why
So
we're
everyone
here.
knows it is on the screen to my left, your right, as the other one is being used for Zoom.
So, the Housing Board, we look at the variety and diversity of housing opportunities in the town. We're a 7-member board. Members are appointed by the town board, and we're an advisory board to the town on housing issues. And in particular, we look at the needs that the current housing market may not be meeting. We were established in 1988 by a resolution by the town board at the time. And by that resolution, the town established an affordable housing program, called for creation of the Affordable Housing Board, which later came to be named the Yorktown Community Housing Board. Called for creation of an affordable housing trust fund to be used for affordable housing in the town, and for the creation of actual affordable housing units for the benefit of the town, for the benefit of town volunteers and the town workforce, among others. So that was the origin. And in those early years, 2 mechanisms were used to create affordable housing units. The first one was SECRA, the State Environmental Quality Review Act, which allows review of the impact of affordability of developments. So both the town board and the planning board used to use SECRA when they had a developer making a proposal, and they would say, oh, these are McMansions that are being built. They're very high end. They're way above the typical prices in Yorktown. They're raising prices. We think you need to mitigate that in some way by either providing affordable housing units in your development, contributing some land for affordable housing, or contributing to the Housing Trust Fund. So that was the use of SECRA. There was also a density bonus law that was passed at the time that gave a certain amount of additional density to a developer in return for the developer including a certain amount of affordable housing units in their development. So this was what was being looked at in the late 1980s, early 1990s. Using those mechanisms, 13 affordable housing units were created and 2 affordable rental units, and the trust fund was created. And by the way, the trust fund now has about $437,500 in it. That's available for use for promoting affordable housing in the town of Yorktown. However, in the mid-1990s, the town board discontinued requiring new developments to include affordable housing units, contribute land, or contribute to the Housing Trust Fund. What I say at the bottom of this slide, that there are no new units currently in the pipeline, that's actually a slight mistake, because there are units that were approved or called for by the planning board or town board resolutions years ago that are just starting to come to fruition today. But there's very little of that remaining. Besides being a board that's supposed to advise the town board, we also administer the tiny affordable housing program that Yorktown has that involves maintaining a waiting list, overseeing the screening of applicants, the sale of or resale of the affordable housing units, and the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Just want to give a few highlights of things that have occurred during the tenure of the Housing Board, some that we've been very involved in and some that we weren't necessarily the drivers of. But, first of all, we had to sell all of the home ownership units that were produced, so that was a busy time in the early and mid-1990s. As I said earlier, the town board, well, no, I didn't say. The town board eliminated in 1994 the density bonus law. And in eliminating it, and this will become important later in the presentation, they changed the language in the regulations governing the units that were already created to say in our affordable housing law that the law only applied to units created before, I think it was August 1994, but it was the date that the density bonus was eliminated and the changes to the affordable housing law were adopted. Later on, in the late 1990s, and it went into the very early 2000s, Wynwood Oaks was proposed in Shrub Oak. And I have to say, this was quite an experience for those of us who were on the housing board at the time. If you think the Soundview public hearings were tough, or that process, you should have been there for Wynwood Oaks. Wynwood Oaks, as affordable senior housing, was going to destroy the Shrub Oak community. I mean, if you look at the records of the public hearings, it was going to bring vandalism and graffiti and drugs and crime to the Shrub Oak community. I'm sure just as Beaver Ridge, the affordable senior development in Yorktown Heights, has done. Well, thank goodness the town board ultimately approved Wynwood Oaks, and I think it's a wonderful housing development for seniors in Shrub Oak, and probably is a very important part of supporting the next door, the viability of the shopping center next door. We, as a board, participated in the comprehensive plan public input when the planning process was underway. We went through two versions of updating the accessory apartment law to make it more effective and more user-friendly for homeowners in Yorktown. Then in 2011, the town adopted, at our recommendation, an affordable housing set-aside law, which required 10% of new developments constructed to be affordable. And around the same time, the town adopted the comprehensive plan rezonings. That's important because those rezonings did a number of things. On the one hand, they reduced the overall build-out possible in the town by upzoning or allowing fewer units to be built in environmentally sensitive areas, such as the area around the reservoirs, for instance. And on the other hand, it took certain areas near hamlet centers and said, we'll allow multifamily housing here. So those were two of the things that were accomplished in the comprehensive plan rezonings. Going forward in time, and this is important, the county had some legal issues on its hands related to affordable housing, lawsuit that the federal government and a not-for-profit were involved in. And as part of the settlement of that lawsuit, there were a number of things that they had to do. One of them was adopt a discretionary funding policy. And under the discretionary funding policy, if there was funding that it wasn't discretionary, that they normally passed along to a town in the county or city, they could do that as normal. But if it was funding that was considered discretionary, and there was a definition of that, they weren't supposed to provide it unless that town or municipality was in compliance with with the county's affordable housing policies. Among those was a model ordinance, which is what we call the set-aside law. So the county legislature actually adopted what we call the DFP, discretionary funding policy. The town subsequently, and that was in 2012, subsequently the town eliminated the affordable housing set-aside law in 2016 that had been adopted in 2012. Then came the town looking for the $10 million for the Halleck's Mill Sewer Project, and that fell under the definition of discretionary funding, unfortunately. Even though it was east of Hudson funds, it was coming through the county and was specifically included in the categories of discretionary funding. That caused a considerable delay, as the county said, well, you had a set-aside law, but you eliminated it. And you put in your local law that it only applies to units before 1994, that's just as if you're thumbing your nose at us and saying there'll never be any more affordable housing units in Yorktown. You're not in compliance with the law. So there were prolonged negotiations that I certainly wasn't a party to, that was between the town and the county. And eventually that resulted in a compromise, and that obstacle was removed, but not after significant delay, probably a year to two of delay in the funding for the Halleck's Mill Sewer District at that time. As part of the compromise with the county, the town eliminated that phrase that this law only applies to units before 1994. And did some other updates that were recommended by the county and some that were recommended by the housing board. Further down the timeline, the town adopted overlay districts, which facilitate multifamily development in certain hamlet centers. To us, that's very important, because if we're talking about housing supply, and of course that's the big, issue from the state level down, this is something that really increases housing supply and the diversity of housing types potentially in town. And the last thing, in 2024, the town opted in on a New York State grant program to help homeowners create or legalize accessory apartments. So that's the timeline, and I'm going to step down now and turn it over to Sarah.
Thank you, Ken. Page down?
Yeah, or just the down arrow.
Okay. Okay, so I'm going to talk about ALICE households. And ALICE is an acronym for Asset Limited Income Constrained Employed. So in Westchester and Putnam counties, 4 out of 10 households are living paycheck to paycheck or in poverty. So they are considered the ALICE population. And the two columns, one shows Westchester, the other shows Putnam, similar in terms of the demographics. The large percentages of ALICE households are in the under 25, right, which makes sense. They're just starting out, and also the senior population. So in the middle are the people at their peak earning years, but the young adults and the older adults in our communities tend to make up that larger group of ALICE households. So what does ALICE have to do with housing? Well, if you're living paycheck to paycheck, if your income is limited, then and you're having to pay high amounts for housing, then there's that much less available for everything else that you have to pay for your food, for your medical care, your prescriptions, your transportation, your utilities. So that's why we're concerned about the cost of housing with households with finite resources. We all have finite resources, but if you're in that, ALICE household, it really creates a huge strain. So then we zoomed in even further to Yorktown and our 5 hamlets and looked at the number of households that are below that Alice threshold. And overall for the town, it's 25% of our households. And you can see specifically in Mohegan Lake, from a percentage standpoint, even though it's a smaller hamlet, it's 33% of the households. And then obviously in terms of quantity, it's Yorktown Heights with 2,420, a total of about 3,700 households. This data is from 2021. Okay, and now we're going to talk a little bit about the guidelines as they're defined first under Westchester County. Basically, income limits are used in calculating the rents and the sale price of affordable housing. Because Westchester County is a high-cost area, we're approved to use a high percentage, 80% of AMI for homeownership. You can see that an 80% AMI, area median income, for a 2-person household is just under $100,000, $99,950 in 2024. And the 60% AMI, which is more typically used for rents, is about $75,000. So these, you know, you see these income amounts, you wouldn't think of somebody earning $100,000 as being low income, right? So these are the limits. In general, as a rule of thumb, housing should make up 30% of a household's budget. So these are the rent limits. In Yorktown, we use something called the low home rate, which was published by Westchester County in 2024. These are the limits for various size apartments. So an example, somebody making $70,500 using the 30% rule of thumb would be able to pay $21,000 a year or $1,700 a month in rent. Under the Yorktown program, to be eligible to purchase an affordable house, we use that 80% of AMI, which we saw before, the just under $100,000. And for renting, it's that 60% AMI or the $75,000 for a 2-person household. And just as a point of comparison, we are showing the median salaries of some of our town employees in various departments. Okay, and we're going to cover just now the inventory. What's our inventory of both market rate and affordable housing here in Yorktown? So the first thing we did is we looked at the 2022 final assessment roll. In some cases, it's taken us a while to pull all this data together. So basically what you see is 9,881 residential parcels, and that includes both single-family homes and certain condominiums. And there are 3,111 classified as apartments in the tax roll. If you extrapolate out from that the number of families based on a single-family house or a 2-family or a 3-family, that would work out to 13,275. According to the 2020 census, we had 13,773 families in Yorktown, so it's within less than 0.5% difference. So that seems pretty reasonable, and as we would expect to see, 72% are single-family residential homes. So looking at Yorktown in total, of those 13,773 units, there are 331 apartments and 46 houses that are affordable, either under the town's program or under the county program, which represents less than 3% of the town's housing. And of those 377 units, which is the 331 plus the 46, 247 of those are age restricted, meaning senior or at least 55 plus. And of those, the majority are the 160 Beaveridge units. And so that leaves just 130 units, which is 84 apartments and the 46 homes, which are affordable units, which are not age restricted, which is, of course, less than 1% of the housing here in Yorktown. So of the apartments, this is just a list. I'm not going to go through it in detail, but of the 968 apartments, once you exclude Jefferson Village, for example, which is included in that 3,111 apartments and other condo communities, these are just the apartments. 968, of which 386 are restricted, age restricted. And then 331 are affordable. Of the 331 that are affordable, only 84 of those apartments are not age restricted. Right, so we see out of the total list of apartments, Beaveridge, Wynwood Oaks, Underhill Apartments, and Keir Street are the affordable apartments. The rest are market rate. And of course, Freedom Gardens, which is designated for disabled. And just another way to look at the units and the apartment units. This is a breakdown of the 968 based on affordable and affordable not age restricted by size. No studios. The majority of them are one bedrooms. So that's the breakdown there. And you can see photos of Beaveridge, I think that's Wynwood, and Keir Street. And then when we move to the single-family homes, the 46, just note that 26 of the 46 are in Crampon Crossing. So these are just photos of some of the 46 units. And these are 4 of the 13 home ownership units that were created under Yorktown's Affordable Housing Set-Aside Program. You know, you drive by and never know that they were affordable homes. So how does Yorktown compare with our neighbors? So we just highlighted a couple of recent developments under Westchester County programs. In Baldwin Place, in Chappaqua, in border of Montrose, Cortland, and in North Salem, a variety of affordable units that have been created, and some of them have been designated for seniors, restricted to seniors, and some non-restricted. And those are photos of Baldwin Place, on the 2 on the left, and then Round Top, and then Bridleside. So obviously the demand for affordable housing far exceeds the supply. Our program, with our 13 units, has a waiting list of more than 500 people. All the affordable rental housing in Yorktown has long waiting lists. And Yorktown residents are applying for and getting affordable housing in these neighboring communities, in Cortland, in Baldwin Place, etc. Okay, I'll turn it back to Ken.
Okay, now that you got the facts, you'll get some more hot air from me. So this is the last part of the presentation, and we focus on recommendations of ways to encourage housing and affordable housing. So the first one on the list is going back to having a density bonus for affordable housing. We just looked quickly at one of the nearby northern Westchester communities. North Salem has a density bonus provision in their zoning code, as an example. Second item is accessory apartments, and as I said earlier, we had revisited the law a couple of times. Of course, I think we all would want accessory apartments to be legal accessory apartments in the town, and as legal apartments, then they come under a certain degree of town supervision and under permits that have to get renewed, and the neighbors can have a say in that, which is, I think, important in a single-family neighborhood. One of the things we thought of is an amnesty program to try to bring in more units that might exist off the record, so to speak. Whether it would be successful or not, I don't know, but I think it's the kind of thing that couldn't hurt if the town would want to consider doing it for a specified period of time. Something we think should be revisited in the accessory apartment law is allowing the owner to occupy the smaller part of the residence. The accessory apartment law has very specific size restrictions. I think the accessory apartment can be no more than 33% of the size of the total house, and between no less than 400 square feet, no more than 800. I may be a little off on these numbers, but there are there are specific restrictions about it. But one of them is that the homeowner has to live in the larger part of the house. And that makes a lot of sense until you might be a senior citizen who needs to downsize and doesn't need such a large house. And for them, they might be better able to afford to stay if they could be in a smaller portion of the house and rent out the larger part of the house. So that could be done for everyone, or it could be a special program for seniors 65 and over, as is mentioned here, but we think that's worthy of consideration. And then I just want to mention the funding program, and I'm very happy that the town is participating in the state program to fund the creation of accessory apartment units. I think we should continue to look at mixed-use developments as was envisioned in the comprehensive plan and mentioned in the overlay districts. A very recent example of that is probably, I don't know how people feel about it, but the development at the corner of Keir Street and 118 where you have apartments over stores. I saw a sign out in front of it saying it was luxury housing, and that word luxury sometimes loosely used, but I think apartments over retail would tend to be more affordable than others. And it increases the housing stock and is doing it in the area where there are retail and other services. So I think it's a win-win. Similarly, one of the zoning categories, C2R, I think that might be called country commercial, but I might be confused. John could certainly correct me. But apartments above stores is currently permitted in Yorktown Heights, and I think that should be expanded to be permitted in other hamlets within the town. And these aren't just things that we came up with. The Comprehensive Plan Policy 5-3 says consider allowing the owners to occupy the smaller unit in an accessory apartment, and Comprehensive Plan Policy 5-2 talks about promoting infill and redevelopment that would be just that type of mixed use. And you can't get away without us bringing up the set-aside once again, for more than one reason, but the main reason is it becomes a very easy way to create additional units that are affordable. So first of all, just some local examples. The town of Bedford, in developments of 5 or more units, requires 10% to be affordable or a fee paid into a trust fund. And in multifamily developments, 20% must be affordable. In Croton, they have developments of 10 or more units, 10% must be affordable. And in North Salem, 10 or more lots, 10% must be affordable. These are just 3 nearby examples. And you know, the 10% or the 20%, none of these numbers are written in stone. Any community can pick what they think is appropriate for the community, for the cost of housing, for the cost of construction and maintenance and management, et cetera. So if Yorktown was willing to entertain a set-aside and 10% seemed too high and you thought 5% would be more appropriate, the county is not going to reject it, you know, on that basis and say, you're not complying with our policy. Because the model ordinance is just that. It's a model. You don't have to follow every percentage and every number in that model. So I wanted to make that point. If the town is willing at some point to consider a set-aside, and you think about the new developments coming in, if you have 150 you know, senior units, I don't know what the number is for the AMS development done where the contractors register was, but even if it was 5%, you would have like 7, you know, or 8 affordable units for seniors that would be mixed into that development. So that would be just a tremendous resource for Yorktown's residents. The other thing that it does, having a set-aside, is it sends a message to the development community. I've talked about the L word, luxury. And if the message is out there that luxury housing is what we want and that's all we want, when a developer comes in your door, they're going to say, we're going to do luxury apartments and luxury townhouses, and there'll be, you know, no affordable, certainly. And that's what they'll propose to you, because that's what they think will get approved. And obviously developers want to get their development approved, don't want to go through a dragged out, long process that's very uncertain. In a community that has a set-aside, you're sending a message, we're open to having affordable housing in our community. And that sends a message. There are some very high-end affordable housing developers. Ginsberg is one that I could think of that are redeveloped waterfronts along the Hudson in some of the river towns. Or I might have been Ginsberg that did the Reader's Digest building in Chappaqua or Mount Kisco. I'm not sure which community that's in. Chappaqua. But they're they're excellent developers of affordable housing. But they're not going to come here if they think that the message they've got is we're not welcome and we're just going to be wasting our money through a long process in which we're going to be denied in the end. So I do think that although the set-aside is just one way, I think there are lots of ways to send a message to the development community that Yorktown is open to having a mix of housing types and sizes. You know, part of affordability is you're not going to have 5,000 square feet, and you're not going to have 2,000 square feet for an apartment. And I think having a mix of sizes is as important as having a mix of types like rental housing and home ownership. Or as important in bedroom size, having, you know, studios and one-bedrooms and larger units, because you're serving different segments of the population that are in need of housing. So that is it, unless you have any questions for the Housing Board.
I have a couple. So you did speak about when the board was formed in the policies, it was to help the Yorktown, like the teachers, the first responders. When did that actually change, where it gets opened up countywide? Well, actually, multi-counties, pretty much state.
Well, I don't remember the year, but Yorktown was sued by a similar, not the same not-for-profit, but a similar not-for-profit that advocates for fair housing. And one of the things they do, and some of these not-for-profits actually have grants from the federal government to make sure there isn't discrimination in housing. And they had testers, and they had testers of 2 different races that and living in 2 different areas, one in Yonkers and one in the town, that contacted our Section 8 department. And I don't know all the details of it, and I don't need to know or want to know. I've always thought very highly of our Section 8 program, but I do know that whatever the responses that were given were enough to be the basis for a lawsuit against the town. And the town, when they eventually settled that lawsuit, did a number of things. They had to do fair housing training for all the members of the town board at the time, members of the housing board and other board members in the town. And they had to not restrict, via a preference rule, people who would be eligible for Section 8, and then they extended it to the housing program, even though we weren't involved in that Section 8 issue that was going on at the time. They insisted in their settlement that it be extended to the housing program, and that the town change its affordable housing law to specify that units would be marketed affirmatively. Fair and affirmative housing is what it's called. And therefore, if you restrict your marketing to a community that's X% white, whereas the surrounding area is got a more diverse population, you could be seen as being discriminatory. So that was what made the initial change, the settlement between the town of Yorktown and the party to that lawsuit. Subsequently, the county had its own legal issues, and anybody in the field of housing knows equal housing opportunity is vital. I've always had very mixed feelings about this because I believe very strongly and passionately about equal housing opportunity. I also am a loyal Yorktown resident, and I believe in helping our own. So that's been my mixed feelings about those changes. But what tends to happen in housing is that, in the last affordable house that we sold in Yorktown, we had applicants that we called off of the list from the Bronx, from Dutchess County, from Brooklyn, from all over the place. And I will say every race, every sexual orientation, quite a diverse group, which made me very happy because it meant that our marketing was very fair and affirmative. And people tend to, rule themselves out if they don't want to go to a community, if it's too far from what they're familiar with, from where their houses of worship are, from where their family is. And we wound up selling the last home to a Yorktown resident who works in the town of Yorktown. So, I was very happy that was the outcome, but I was also happy that the process was open and fair. So yes, we can't in an affordable housing program restrict any more than a realtor. If they try to steer people of a certain race away from Yorktown, they can get into big trouble for that. And there's training done with realtors, and there are realtors who have been sued and had to do court settlements over just that issue.
Okay. I do agree that we need to look at the accessory apartment law. And I know there was a conversation actually with Michael Grace, where he was floating a mini cottage, accessory cottage law as well for some of the bigger pieces of property. And that exact thing that you said, where you might have a senior who owns a property, wants to downsize, and either rent the house and or, right now we have a lot of multi-generational living where, you have the kids in the house, and, would give the parents a little peace of mind, or, whether it's single or still, or still married. So you may want to touch base with him, because I said it sounds very good if you wanted to present something, because I know that's another area that we could add to.
So we did present that in at least the last iteration, if not the one before that, and it was hotly debated. And once again, I may be mistaken because I don't have all this in my head, but I think in the last set of revisions, they allowed accessory apartments in accessory structures on the property in 2-acre zones or greater. So it was limited in that way. Now, Could it be made more flexible? Yeah. Could there be an apartment over a garage or something? But that's what came out of the last set of revisions, I believe.
Yeah, I definitely think it's something to, from a housing stock point of view to look at, because it all looks at housing stock. And there were definitely a couple of issues I'd talked to my board members about on that, but I was curious. We talked about 2-person and 4-person residents. Now, is that 2-person income, or is that, that could be a single mom or single dad with a child for 2 people?
Yeah, I have the Westchester County guidelines here, and they just break it down because this is where the federal government does. The federal government annually publishes area median incomes for communities all around the country, and they break it down by 1-person household, 2-person, 3-person, 4-person. It doesn't say what the composition of that household is at all. It's just that based on the household size, this is your maximum income for eligibility.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right, and then where does the Section 8 program fit into the affordability programs?
So the Section 8 is an interesting program because there was a point where at the federal level, the federal government was subsidizing the construction of very large public housing projects. And I believe it was in the Reagan administration, they said instead of concentrating very high numbers of very low-income families in one place, why don't we come up with a program that subsidizes lower income households to allow them to get housing in the private marketplace. So I believe it was in the Reagan administration that the Section 8 program was developed to do just that. So what does it do? It doesn't create a single new unit of housing in the town of Yorktown or anywhere else, but if I'm a family and I can only afford to pay $1,000 a month rent and all the rents are $2,000 a month, Section 8 has very specific guidelines to say if you're chosen on the list, then the federal government subsidy will cover the other $1,000. You still have to pay $1,000 a month, and if you don't pay your $1,000, you're out of the program. But if you pay your $1,000, we pay our $1,000, then the landlord gets their money, and you get to afford to live in an apartment that you otherwise could not afford to live in. So that's the way the Section 8 program works. I think it's a great program. Our Section 8 program has struggled because of availability of units that are affordable even for Section 8, which uses something called federal fair market rent. And so they can't pay over a certain amount of rent for an apartment. So there's that, and there's the issue of acceptance by private landlords of the program. It's a program that involves annual inspections of the apartments to make sure they're up to Section 8 standards. And so it's a little more intrusive than just somebody renting an apartment in their house, and they're completely in control of it.
Do we know how many apartments in Yorktown get Section 8 help, or we don't really have that number offhand?
We'd have to get that from Sandrine. I don't know
Just
that
more
off the top of my
curiosity
head.
type of- Okay.
Well, I think that, honestly, the amnesty and the ADUs, they make sense. They really do, you know? To look for the amnesty and, the ADUs, the people living longer, they're able to go into the smaller ADU, and now you have someone that has 2 kids or something, can take the bigger portion of the house, whether it's family members or not, you know what I mean? So, it does make sense, a lot of the stuff you made.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ken, hi, thanks for a wonderful presentation. Can you, 2 questions. One, can you distinguish the income eligibility on a Section 8 from the, what we generally call affordable housing or workforce housing that we tend to think about for a set-aside as different groups with different income ranges? Well, that's the first question. And the second question is, there have been comments over time that a set-aside is not legal. Could you address that question? Thanks.
So for the first question, I'm really going to have to punt because I'm not that up to speed on Section 8. In the back of my mind, I'm thinking 50% of area median income is the maximum income
Yeah,
for eligibility.
70,000 and change according to what Sandrine gave us, I think.
Yeah, we showed the 50% numbers on the screen, but I'm not 100% positive of that. But that's, so, it's designed for not the very, very low income household because, yeah, it can serve somebody with virtually no income, but it was designed for basically working families earning low to moderate income.
But you can only, there's, like, the town has a limited number of Section 8 vouchers. So, and the waiting list to get a Section 8 voucher is a long, long waiting list. So that doesn't mean that all the other people that Sarah talked about in terms of the Alice group, the young adults who are living with their parents and the parents would like to see them get out, all right, or some of the seniors, those are the people who are desperately in need of the housing.
The demand is so great for Section 8 that you'll notice whenever the town of Yorktown opens its Section 8 program, and virtually any Section 8 program in this region, it will open it for a very limited time. It might just be for a week or a few days because they get overwhelmed with applications, and just managing thousands of applications becomes an extreme burden to a very small Section 8 program. So yeah, the demand is there. It's like gold for a family at a certain income level, that if they can get that, it gives their family some stability, where they're not struggling to make the same decisions between putting food on the table and paying rent to the landlord and buying medicines and the things that were discussed by Sarah in the Alice discussion. The second thing,
Legal issues, yeah.
I'm sorry.
The legality of it.
Oh, yes.
In the past, especially when the set-aside law was repealed, there was a question about whether it was legal, constitutional or not.
And that question was raised by former Supervisor Michael Grace. I would doubt that his opinion has changed on that. He had very strong feeling that it was an illegal taking from private developers, or an illegal tax. I would say, and we responded to this in the past. I brought in information on an actual United States Supreme Court ruling where a developer appealed all the way, and it went all the way to the Supreme Court on a set-aside issue, and the Supreme Court upheld the set-aside as being legal. You make all sorts of restrictions on development through zoning, and you make those determinations for a public benefit. You don't want a gas station on a cul-de-sac residential neighborhood. You do all kinds of things that restrict the ability of developers and what they can develop, where they can develop it, and what sizes they can develop, the mass, the height, etc. So this is one more thing that you're able to do if you wish to do it, if you deem it a valid public purpose to increase affordable housing. If, in terms of the legality, I mean, it was part of a legal settlement between the whole model ordinance, between the County of Westchester, the federal government, approved by a court. I mean, it existed long before that settlement. If you look at the towns around us, I think I cited a couple, Bedford, Croton, I forget the third, North Salem, that have set-aside laws. They're all around, so you'd have to assume that all the town attorneys from all these other municipalities are wrong, and I really don't think so. I don't think there's a question of legality. Now, there's a question of, is this something you want? You can have a philosophical point of view that it's not right to impose this on a developer, and that I understand, and I can argue with that, but I respect that as a point of view, but I will argue with the question of legality because I think there isn't really a question.
Ken, I don't know if you can hear me. I don't want to interrupt you, but like overall, I feel like it's countywide. It's been a situation countywide. There is more affordable housing in certain areas of the county, but that doesn't mean that it's actually accessible or that it's okay. So I guess what I'm hearing is like you're saying that it's the amount that we're trying to increase within our town.
I'm not sure if I understand the question, but
I guess I want to meet you in the fact that like I've spoken with other people even down county, and it's a crisis overall because affordability and living in an affordable home is so hard, even for those that are making money. It's just so hard.
yeah, Yorktown is predominantly a single-family home community, and I think will always be that. And nobody's trying to change that. And obviously, all development raises all sorts of concerns by people. So it's a matter of finding the right balance, is what this is all about. And the reason I like the idea of the set aside is it spreads it out wherever development occurs. And if you make it a small percentage of the development, I mean, take a developer like AMS. I happen to know them from my past job. They're used to working in communities that have set-aside requirements. So they come here and they'll pretend they know nothing about that, and that they're not going to have no intention of doing that. They're going to use the L word. But if they were asked, if they were told, we as a town would be more inclined to approve your zoning if you were including some more affordably priced units in your development, I think they would say yes. They would recalculate their numbers and come up with, a slightly different plan. So I think it's a matter of finding the right balance, and we believe.
And I hear what you're saying, and I guess my question here is, I hear the Alice, and thanks, Sarah, for that, because in New York City, the state would help fund those developments as well. Whether they would gift the mortgage taxes for the new development, like how when you buy new construction, the mortgage tax is passed on to the buyer. They would allot funding for it. Is that something that they're willing to do for Westchester County?
It happens, different sources of funding exist for affordable housing. Generally speaking, almost all affordable housing built nowadays involves low-income housing tax credits. That was what Wynwood Oaks used. I believe that's what one of the things that Underhill Apartments used in their redevelopment here in Yorktown, and they also used a government's rent subsidy as well. There are, you could do tax-exempt bond financing that brings you, the developer, cheaper money if they're doing affordable housing. There are a myriad of state programs, and if you look at the units that were developed on Kear Street or Crampond Crossing in the Fairmount Triangle, they all had various amounts of government money into those developments. But there we're talking about developments that were 100% affordable, and that's a different animal. I'm not saying we shouldn't do that. I very strongly feel, if there's the right development proposal in the right place, we should be open to that. The set-aside is something completely different.
So there was sort of a shift in the language as you were talking, and it sort of leads into a question. You mentioned affordable, you mentioned low income. What's the definition difference on that is my first part.
So the term...
wait, can I add to that question? And then after explaining that, Ken, my darling, can you also add that once you have the affordable housing, how does that secure them for a future?
Okay.
And I mean, like after they sell that affordable, are there programs that come with it to create everyone to be able to, to raise their own farm kind of thing? You know what I mean?
Yes.
I find that when I work with clients that come from affordable housing, they're not taught about taxes. They're not taught about 401k. They're not taught about those things. And I'm wondering if affordable housing also has those programs to educate those, to offer them a better life even after they leave the home that they got for affordable housing.
Well, I think some affordable housing is just a building, like an apartment building, like any other, and therefore doesn't offer anything like that. And some affordable housing serves populations that are very much in need of services, and they come built in, and there's state funding for that, with supportive housing staff that are actually on site and part of the management staff of the project. I think that, you know, in affordable housing, you're a renter just like in regular housing. You have to pay your rent, and nobody's handing anything else to you on a plate. You have to have your sources of money to live and to pay your rent. Yes, it would be wonderful if there were other programs that help people be upwardly mobile. And affordable home ownership, and Section 8, by the way, has built into it some kinds of supportive counseling for people with that goal in mind, to not only help people succeed with the Section 8 subsidy, but to hopefully be able to move on.
Bless.
Some people do and some people don't. In our affordable home ownership program, and in affordable rental housing, there are income limits, and you exceed the limits, you have to leave in a certain period of time. In our affordable home ownership program, once you buy the house, that's it. You hit the lottery, or your earnings go up. You're in that house, you know, until you sell it. Nobody's going to kick you out because it's become even more affordable for you now, when it was you could just barely handle it, and it was the only way you could get a house when you moved in. But people ultimately want to move along in life if they can afford to. And it's just that their profit that they can make on an affordable home with deed restrictions is very limited.
Yeah, so that's a philosophical conversation as well, as we've had before.
Yes.
But here, so my second part of my question is, your medium home price in the United States now, I think, just topped $460,000. If I'm a builder and I'm building, and I won't say set aside, maybe I'm going to say a density bonus is offered, and I want to take advantage of that. How is the pricing set for that unit or those units?
So if you look at programs around the county, you'll see it set in different ways. Generally speaking, home ownership is set at something affordable to somebody earning 80% of the area median income, which is why Sarah showed all those tables. It was about $100,000 for a family of two, $125,000, I think, for a family of four. So then you look at what can that family afford, and that's how you back into the pricing. There are other programs that use higher than 80% of area median income. There's various ways to do it. And then, of course, outside of the affordable with a capital A, I talked about the town paying attention to the size of units, so that within even just a total market rate development, to encourage the developers to have a variety of sizes, so that there's a variety of prices, a nice range to meet a wider range of needs in the community.
So I understand, like, being able to figure out an apartment, the rent for that with the medium. It seems a little arbitrary on housing, because, you know, some of that might depend on how much do I have to put down, how much is my mortgage rate. So it looks like there's a lot of sliding scale in that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a fixed way that you calculate these things that assume a certain amount of mortgage and down payment and everything, and that's built into the town of Yorktown's code on our affordable housing program, and in everybody else's, because you have to have a set way to calculate something. But I understand that the challenges with that. What you'll find is the housing market in Yorktown, let's say in the 1950s, was creating lots of starter homes. People returning from World War II, veterans, starting families, didn't have a lot of money. So there were some very small homes, a small 2-bedroom home, 1,000 to 1,500 square feet being built. You don't see that today. So the affordable homes in our program, that's the size you're going to see. You're going to see 1,000, 1,100, 1,200, 1,300 square feet. So they cost a lot less for a developer to build than a 2,500 or 3,500 square foot home.
Okay. Could you do me a favor, if you get a chance? Maybe do the math on what a unit would cost based on today's formulas that are there. If you get that chance, and just, let me know. It just helps my train of thought.
Sure, and you calculate in, so you have to make some assumptions, but you calculate in PITI, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, that what are considered the core costs of keeping the real estate going, the house, and you use that calculation to determine what somebody could pay on a 30-year fixed rate mortgage.
And I assume that the tax assessment is pretty much the same as standard taxing?
It's not. If you're talking about just a smaller size house in a market development that doesn't have any deed restrictions, then it's assessed in the same way. They use square footage, the size of the building, the size of the land, et cetera. Whatever the formulas are used would be used. If you're talking about capital A affordable that has deed restrictions that limit the resale, so this house is not going to be resold for $400,000 if that's where the market is. If it was bought at $200,000, it might be resold for $220,000 9 years later or something. I'm just throwing out numbers. So the assessors have guidelines from the state as to how they are to assess that kind of property.
Gotcha. All right. You didn't think you were getting off easy as your last meeting as chairman, huh?
Also, the county on their website used to have an actual calculator for what you just asked me for, so I can actually use their calculator and plug in numbers to it.
I appreciate that.
And let me just ask, to that point, but also to what you asked, Luciana. There are organizations like Westchester WRO, Residential Opportunities, and probably others that do offer counseling programs to people who are considering, to first-time home buyers, all, I think, basically free. So they go through everything that's involved in owning a home. So some of us who were first-time home buyers many, many years ago, it was, wow, I didn't realize this. I didn't think about that. Okay, this organization will sit you down and go through all of that to say, can you really deal with the costs of owning a home and what's involved? And that service is out there.
Yes, and some of the people on our waiting list that I called in had already been through first-time home buyer counseling. I think the last buyer, we referred them and they went to a couple of sessions, but the program was going to be many months long, and they had a house they had to close on in X number of months, so they had to complete the sale before they could complete the first-time home buyer counseling. But those programs are available, yes.
Great.
Thank you. And thank you for the work of the Housing Board. And we didn't acknowledge another member. There was also
Yes.
Maura Gregory, who's been, I think, a long-time member. Thank you for your service.
Sonia was going to be here, but is sick today, so.
Feel better,
You said
Sonia.
it's a 7-member board. Are you looking for new members?
Thank you. I was supposed to say that. We have 4 members out of 7. So if we want a real majority of the board for a vote, we need 100% attendance. Fortunately, we get that fairly often. But we are looking for more members. So if you're concerned with the diversity of housing types and the balance of housing in the town of Yorktown, we're very interested in having you. We meet the first Wednesday night of the month. It's on the town website in the Albert Cappellini Cultural Center. Room 26. And so people are welcome to just come and sit in and see if they would like to be part of the group, or they could submit a letter of interest to the town board, the town supervisor, and ultimately you have to be interviewed by the town board, and the town board has to appoint you.
Thank you, Ken. And you guys, you're not leaving yet, right, Ken? You're staying
No.
for the resolution. Sarah, you as well?
Lucky you.
I saw your pillow and blanket over there. All right, so we have 2145 Hunter Brook Road for an MS4. Is Dan CRC here, or?
That way.
Actually, Joe Rena is the engineer that submitted.
Okay, yep,
I think he's
Joe's here too.
conducting something important out there.
Just by way of introduction, so this is one of these applications. The gentleman started basically
We can look into
grubbing,
that one, yeah.
grubbing and clearing his property. And based upon our inspection, we felt it was over the threshold. So we put together an application, and he's appearing before you. So Joe will describe in more detail what the application entails.
Thank you. I don't know, Joe. We might have to skip and put you on at the end of the night, which could
After
be tomorrow.
resolutions.
So this here. It's the wrong way.
Oops, sorry. So this is, good evening, everybody. So this is the property. It's on Hunter Brook Road. It's a 10-acre parcel. This is White Hill Road, right over here. You've got, I'm sorry, White Hill is right over here. You've got Wilkins Orchard up on the hill. The Hunter Brook borders the back side of the property right here. So it's a vacant property. Back in the 80s, it was subject to a subdivision that the owner never pursued, continued to pursue, but we worked on that back in the 80s. Since then, it has been rezoned, so it's now, there is a possibility for 2 lots, but there are some some environmental constraints on the property that limit that. So this is a survey of the property. There's some old delineation of wetlands from when we were doing this subdivision back in the 80s. There's the town drainage pipe discharges right here onto the property, and has created a channel through the property that runs all the way down to the Hunter Brook. This area gets heavily eroded. This basin cannot handle the water, and it sometimes just rips across the road and created a whole an eroded condition going through there. As far as vegetation on the site, there's not many trees on the site. It wasn't that long ago that it was all open field and meadow type cover. And since then, some very thick brush had grown into the property. And so what Mr. Bartolini was looking to do was open up the property. He's not looking to, at this point, disturb anything. We do have an application with the health department in process, being processed for a septic system and potential home on the property. But he was just looking to open up the property for now, take out some of the brush. A lot of fallen trees. Was looking to take them out and get them off the site.
All right, so why is a stormwater permit required for clearing of trees, or?
Yeah, I'll let Dan answer that.
It was sort of borderline. The trees are all under, it says brush and trees under 8 inches. But the overall land disturbance was kind of crossing the threshold. So that's where the stormwater came in. And the scope of it was such that it triggered town board jurisdiction. So that's why we're before you this evening.
Is just clearing brush considered land disturbance? You're not,
You know, the code is somewhat ambiguous.
this is the erosion and, the erosion control, like?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's not, you know, you clear and brush, are you really churning up the surface that much if you're, you know, using small equipment and grinding stumps? You are disturbing it. So it becomes difficult, you know, it's one thing if you're building a house and there's really a very defined, limited disturbance. But this is kind of zigzagging in between the trees and just doing general cleanup, but it appeared that the scope of that exceeded 20,000 square feet.
And equipment could disturb the ground, because I think we had this issue recently in some other parcel, which will go unnamed. But I know that this code needed, I know years ago, it needed updating. There was a lot of ambiguity in a lot of sections. So I was surprised. I didn't understand when I saw this application why you needed the
Yeah,
permit.
I mean, a read of how the code reads kind of puts us here. You know, in my opinion, it doesn't seem like that big of an issue. It's really property maintenance. And this is the kind of thing that if you're just cleaning up your property and you're not bringing in large excavators, some silt fence would be more than sufficient to make sure that the area stabilizes, and areas like that stabilize very quickly, especially you got all the leaf litter all over it. It's not like you're scarifying the topsoil off.
Will there be work in the wetlands, or the wetland buffer? Will there be some of the brush clearing there? Will it need a wetlands permit?
There is clearing in the buffer.
So will it need a wetlands permit? Is that part of the wetlands code?
That my reading of the wetlands code is you're allowed to do ground maintenance, and removing brush covers that.
On the buffer.
Yeah, in the buffer. That's my reading of it. As far as, you know, there, as Dan had said, just a matter of having the small equipment in there, you're going to get some churning up of the ground, but it's not like you're going in and doing a full clearing and grubbing of the entire site. It's more scattered and easily stabilized. The plan, on the plan, we're showing silt fence to be, has it been installed, the silt fence?
No.
So,
Well,
So you
can
wouldn't-
Adam look into that for us? Adam, can you look into that? Because I read it the same way Joe does. I feel like the buffer needs maintenance to protect the wetlands, so that should be allowed. Is there a certain extent of the work in the buffers that needs to be controlled?
Yeah, I mean, we can, yes.
Yeah.
Is this something that the Conservation Board should look at? Because, and you're dealing with the clearing of, through most of the 10 acres?
So
No,
it's
not-
not
Well,
clearing,
no,
it's.
it's not. It sounds more
Brush,
like
the
it's
brush.
maintenance.
right, removal of brush, it's not, you know, we're not going in there and,
Yeah, it sounds like maintenance of it,
you know, it's not going there and doing
a clearing.
going in there with equipment and plowing the surface and removing the surface vegetation.
Can you
where it's
also
bare.
identify and limit the types of equipment? I don't know what kind of equipment is going to be
We're
used.
talking about a brush hog?
So we're getting off, because if it's going for a public hearing, it's getting referred out anyway.
Okay,
So it's a moot point.
all right.
So,
And let me ask you a question. What is the plan for the lot down the road? Is it two? Is
right
it
now,
one?
we're processing a permit for septic system and a single-family home on the property.
All right, and I assume that it's basic stormwater anyway, but I assume that would help in the long run, and it'll need to be expanded down the
Right,
road.
Right, a full site plan will be developed.
Yeah.
I mean, this is just, I mean, we're here because Mr. Barleen had already attempted to do some of the clearing, and the engineering department stopped him, and so we're here to rectify that situation.
All right, so.
At some point, we're gonna be back for a permit, an excavation permit for the construction of the home.
That's not the order of what happened.
If you'd like to come up to the microphone with Joe, Mr. Bartolini?
Yes, sir. Thank you. I'm John Bartolini. About 6 months ago, we were finalizing the Board of Health inspection with the Board of Health there, and we realized how beautiful the property was. The family's owned it for 35 years. And we said, boy, we should just clean this up. It looks like a mess. So I went to engineering. Very nice to deal with Yorktown, I have to tell you. We read the law. The law is very clear, the environmental law, that you can clean, maintain, cut brush. You can cut trees below 8 inches without a permit. We had a meeting of the minds that no permit was necessary. So I put it on my schedule to do it when I could. So the day I started, I went back to engineering, and I spoke to Will. I said, well, we're starting today. I imagine it's going to be a high-profile job because there's a chipper, very loud. There's a loader pulling the chipper through the woods, so that's impressive. But it's a small loader. This is like little landscape stuff. This isn't the big. This is the TV landscape home stuff. There's a mini excavator that only weighs 7,000 pounds, picking up the 8-inch and under trees and putting them through. But but when Bartolini does something, it's kind of impressive and upsetting. So that's why I went to engineering that morning. I said, look, we're starting. I would expect in that neighborhood somebody might not like this. And sure enough, and I have no problem with it because I expected it. I'm senior enough to know. Somebody emailed, came in, complained. No problem. Will came to the job site. My sons were there working. I was at a conference in Miami. And Will asked us to stop because of the complaint. So, of course, we immediately stopped. We have evacuated the machinery as not to aggravate the other citizens, because I don't need that. So at that point, I got back 3 days later. I went and saw Will. He goes, look, it's arguable. It's a big event. We should really put this in front of the board, and that way, if we get any other kind of complaints, we have a permit. I'm in business. I'm a senior man. I agreed. I didn't mind the fees. I didn't mind the time. I thought it would be best. So I am glad I'm sitting here. I wasn't actually going to come. I was at the beach with the family, but I got a call. So that's why I'm here late, and I apologize. It would have came more appropriately presentable.
I'd rather dress more like you today.
It's just embarrassing, and I didn't know Joe was going to be here. Okay. I wasn't even going to come and see you guys. I was going to let you do your thing on your own. I didn't want to bother you. I've never been here in 38 years.
Let me just throw this out. I think at this point, we could just set for a hearing and, take the application and look at it and get it taken care
Has
of.
to be referred.
Yeah, well, we could refer.
Prefer not to set the public hearing quite yet, or you give me latitude to do that, because we have a lot of public hearings that are gonna be large
Okay.
coming up.
All right, so we could refer it, and we'll look at the dates for public hearing.
Do we need a public hearing, though? If
If it comes before the board,
Town
yes.
board, yeah.
But even if the conservation law says what I can do is permissible, see, we're just kind of, we don't really have we're kind of here just not to,
I think what your statement before saying that you want to do the right thing, which I appreciate.
so the
and
hearing
make
is the
sure-
right thing?
If it's questionable and it's there, it's a hearing.
Okay.
But it doesn't,
Also long-term.
Yeah.
He wants to put a house there.
yeah.
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 So, yeah.
Okay, yeah, Joe agrees. Yep, great.
This way, as you said, all the questions will be answered.
Yeah.
Once the machinery, if you get the permit and the machinery starts, you can tell the neighbors it's legal.
Yeah,
So,
yep,
that would,
smart,
yeah,
uneventful.
yeah.
Right.
Since you had the one negative experience, this will.
It wasn't horrible, but yeah,
Yeah.
we don't need that.
Okay.
Yeah, play by
Do
the
it right,
rules.
do it right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So what we're gonna do is amend the plan. We're gonna show the development, proposed house location, the proposed septic location. We'll get it all done at one time.
Yeah, I think when it's referred, it needs a little bit more detail in the application. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Joe, thank you.
Save some future work.
All right, 2991 Hickory Street, another MS4.
Yeah, this one's just a single-family house. It exceeds the threshold for our administrative permits. Something you may want to consider in the future that, I don't know, the town board needs to be seeing single-family homes, but at the moment, that's how our code is written. It's over the threshold, so this applicant is before you to get the MS4 permit for the purpose of building a single-family home.
Can you do me a favor and have a conversation with Adam about the administrative permit limit tomorrow?
Sure.
Appreciate it.
This
Okay.
could be part of the whole thing of revising that code, and we're doing a code review, and
Yeah.
this might be
But
one of the ones that,
let's get some stuff on paper and see about moving.
Okay, so yeah, so the
Also,
issue would be to set this one up for a public hearing when,
can I ask a question about this? Has it been approved by the Board of Health for a septic system?
Is this you or Joe with you, or just you? All right. So, what do we? Do you want to go over exact? You don't have a.
Yeah. Do you want to? Do you have a plan? You want me to put up a plan?
So right now we're just looking to refer out and come back, right?
yes.
Just, I looked at this earlier. I don't, Susan, you got a chance to see it or no?
Yeah, no, I looked at it, yeah. Yeah, it was too small, as I saw it. Just a quick question, Adam, does this kind of hearing under this law require the public notification that you would get if you were doing a rezoning or a subdivision or a site plan? Because I'm just wondering if the neighbors would have to be notified if there are drainage issues. Hickory
there's-
can be a problem street.
If there's a public hearing that is called, then yes, they do have to notice the interested parties, which would be around that area.
It would have to be, thank you, okay.
All right, so let's put it out for referral, and then we will.
Well, all the water's staying on the property, so.
Okay, yeah, we'll put it out for referral to our different departments, and just give us a opportunity to get that back and find a date for a public hearing.
Okay.
We'll get it moving.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
That's it.
That was
And
easy.
That's it.
You want to
Good
give us
night.
some
You
short
too,
ones, some
take care.
fast, some long ones.
Mr. Tegater, and maybe Ken with another hat on tonight. 3266 Lakeshore Drive, Mohegan Lake. Oh. We're giving you our A team.
Joyce Gravanos. I'm
Hi,
the
Joyce.
owner of 3266 Lakeshore Drive. That's 4 consecutive dock lots on Mohegan Lake. Slopes downward 100 feet approximately to the water, and there's 200 linear feet if you include all of the properties. I'm interested in sort of donating it either to Land Trust or to the town, but I think it would benefit me more, according to my accountant, if I take a loss, so that would be a sale of maybe $1, tax-wise. He said he prefers that way. I have with me proof of ownership, proof of name change, divorce papers. I have the whole thing, this stack this big. You can have it. So you just tell me what you need.
Okay, so this would again need a referral, correct?
Yeah, the process would be that the town clerk's office would refer it out to appropriate departments of the town for their comments.
Okay, so we could definitely do that, but I'd like to ask a couple questions, John and Ken, if you don't mind. Ken, you come up there too, so. The dock lots, can you explain to the public exactly what we're looking at, what it's connected to, and I know Ken, you had brought up a good point about the slope and the trees staying in place. versus any type of clearing.
Okay, is this a question for Ken?
I guess so.
So, Lakeshore Drive there, on that side of the road where this property is located, the area between the road and the lake is relatively narrow, so it's not large enough for a single-family home to be constructed on it. I think there might have been an unsuccessful application in the past. It was unsuccessful because it wasn't suitable for building. So it's been something that the Mohegan Lake Improvement District advocated to the town probably 30, 40 years ago, to whenever these issues came up, for the town to take over what we call dock plots. They're usually 25 or 50 feet wide, and they stretch, between the road and the shore of the lake. And at some point, 100, 200 years ago, whenever it was, land was subdivided in that way because somebody was selling off these individual dock plots. And there are many that are used just for that purpose, and there are many that are across the street from a single-family home, and those people use their dock plot. But there are also many that aren't used and are just grown wild. And it was felt that it was beneficial to the lake environment to preserve as much woodland around the lake as possible, because that becomes a buffer for stormwater runoff. So that's why the town has historically taken over quite a few dock plots over the years, and why we in the Lake Improvement District feel like if you have the opportunity, it's a bargain for $1.
I was going to haggle it down a little bit. All right.
And I just some questions. Thank you, and I get it, again. It is a no-brainer. Can you explain to me? I've heard issues about dock lots over the years. Are they parkland or are they just town-owned land? And what is the difference? And if we take, not if, but when we take these lots, should it be declared parkland? And does parkland come with any restrictions? Because could we turn it into a tot lot with swings or whatever? Or can it be remain in its natural state, even if it's parkland? So can you kind of go through that? And the taxing implications?
So I can't answer all of your questions. So the one I can answer is it's from our point of view, these type of dock plots are the best use is preservation of the environment. The town has Rock Hill Park, a fairly large parcel with a lot of lakefront, and we think that should be a park and a public park and developed as such. And there's an approved plan for that was developed by the Parks Commission, and hopefully someday that will be funded and done. There's also a parcel on Mohegan Avenue behind the credit union and the child care center that if you go there, we do a cleanup every Yorktown cleanup day, Battle of Yorktown. We clean up the litter there, but if you go there, you'll see boats there. It's completely unregulated, but that's town parkland. And it's used by the public and not necessarily people from Mohegan Lake for fishing primarily. So those are more public access lots. Here we're talking about a dead-end, very narrow street and a very narrow strip of land between the street and the lake, and therefore I think environmental preservation is the best use. Having looked at parcels all around the lake, because we have to do mailings related to mostly the state permits, there are many of these small dock plots that are titled Town of Yorktown Parkland. There are also many that are titled Town of Yorktown. I'm not an expert on what the tax implications are for the two types of holdings, and what the long-term preservation implications are. So I'm not really sure. I think Adam might be able to answer that question better than I could.
If we take land like parkland, can we restrict the use of it in any possible way?
Well,
So that it always stays in its natural state, which is the
Yeah, you
preferred.
can, if you dedicate, you can, when the town takes the land, it can dedicate it as parkland, and it becomes parkland, and it would be restricted to park uses that subject to, you know, alienation, modification of the state legislature. But as a practical matter, the town would be in charge of whatever happens on the land and can do what it wants with it. So if it wants to conserve it and keep it as open space, it can do that.
And it could use it for a recreational facility or something.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Which
of
is
course.
what I
If it-
think would,
If
you
it's
would not
dedicated,
want it done if you would cut down the trees and use it for, it would, it would,
There's also a problem getting to the property.
The grade is very steep, so I can't imagine it being usable unless you did extensive excavation.
sounds like it's not buildable and practically not.
I'm just thinking, you know.
It's difficult to even walk down to the water.
That whole area, like even the park that's part of, which park is that for Mohegan Lake, where we were?
Rock Hill Park?
Rock Hill Park. You know, there's this big, long walkway to get down because it's very steep. Actually, when I saw it on Lake Day, I almost turned around and went back to the car. But yeah, no, so that area is difficult to transverse down the path.
I mean, I think the point that Susan is raising came up, I don't know if it was a year ago or 2 years ago, because Jim, there's nothing, you know, on a parcel that says what the purpose of it is. And Jim saw parkland and got a proposal from an Eagle Scout just a few lots south of these lots to build a boat rack there for town access to the lake, a kayak rack. And Jim thought, wow, that's a fantastic idea, and gave the scout the go-ahead. And of course, nobody in the Lake District knew. The homeowners association there operates a large beach park. That's Mohegan Beach Park. It's a town park district. They have boat racks, and all those residents on that street have use of that to store their boats. So all of a sudden, a neighbor sees construction work happening by the Parks Department to provide access down to the lakefront. I won't go into the details of the mess because it turned out to be a bit of a mess. And unfortunately, Jim kind of got burned, and then I had an upset Eagle Scout who said I, sold my project for approval based on it providing public access, and because the rack eventually got moved elsewhere into the park district, because if it was going to be for the residents of the area, they already have a secured, area that's their recreation area where boats are kept. So it was a bit of a mess, and that's because there's no restrictions on the use. And Jim, being relatively new, just saw town parkland. Oh, well, I can do whatever I want. But yeah, there's a responsibility the town takes on when you have land of trees full or whatever. But I think it's best left as natural property, and it's a great opportunity to be able to take it over and preserve it, in my view.
Thanks.
Could that be part of a resolution when it's accepted and dedicated as parkland, to just put the intent of the town is to keep it in its natural state, which doesn't preclude something else happening 10 years from now, 20 years from now, somebody wants to build another kayak access,
It would be a symbolic gesture.
Yeah, that's what I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So we could refer this out.
Can you take a vote on all three for me?
Okay, so can I have a motion to refer out the two MS4s and the land acceptance?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
Thank you. We'll get it referred out and then
Let me
follow
know.
along the steps. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joyce. All right. So there's a new proposal, request to rezone property from R120 to RSP2 for 3 multi-story residential apartment style buildings. It's 1700 East Main Street. Mark, how are you?
Guys coming forward? Good evening, Mr. Supervisor, members of the town board. Good to see you all. David Steinmetz from the law firm of Zarin and Steinmetz here, representing the Mardo Group in connection with our pre-submission discussion with your board about the possibility of rezoning. I'm joined by my client, Quinn Cifatelli, Joe Rena, our project engineer, Chris Raffaelli, our project architect, and Michael Orifici, our development and project manager. We're here to present a concept for what we think is actually a very unique housing type. And listening to Ken's presentation seems ironically very timely for why we're here. There's a lot going on in Yorktown. We're very well aware of it. Our team is aware of it. My office is involved in some other projects, so we're quite well aware. We're here tonight in connection with a piece of property at Strawberry Road and Route 6. It is, Joe, 21 acres in size, and we think that we have the ability to introduce a housing type under the RSP2 zone that is something unlike what we have in Yorktown. The concept is an age-restricted residential rental with a wellness facility and common area in the middle of 3 buildings containing 144 units. The building would have space for fitness center, cafe, stretching and Pilates, card room, things for folks to congregate, but it would also have a medical component. And there would be numerous offices or areas within that building that could be utilized by medical professionals who would come to the site and be there to provide assistance and medical care for seniors who need it. So it's something different from the typical assisted living that we are seeing spring up throughout the county. I'm involved in a number of assisted living, independent living, and Alzheimer memory care projects elsewhere in the county that are typically rather high-end, expensive facilities. This concept would appeal to a different niche in the marketplace. We think it would actually appeal to a different niche in the marketplace from what our competitors may be doing elsewhere on Route 6 with other residential projects and elsewhere in the town. So we really would like to explore this further with the town board. We think the RSP2 zone is conducive to what we're trying to do here. I'm going to let Joe walk through the site plan a little bit so you understand how we think we can utilize the site. We're talking about a Route 6 ingress and egress point with emergency access on Strawberry. Joe and I are both very well aware that it's going to present some challenges with New York State DOT to make that intersection work. We think it can work. We wouldn't be here if we hadn't spent months as a team talking about this. We actually think we can make that work. In addition, there's quite a bit of open space that would be left around the perimeter of the property, as you can see from this conceptual site plan. We think we can landscape it attractively and offer, again, a rental project and a rental product that's different from what we have elsewhere in the town. We have some architecturals that we can share with you. They're preliminary, but it gives you a sense of what it is that we think we can generate there. Michael has spent a great deal of time on projects of this nature and has already reached out, and there's interest in the marketplace to come to Yorktown and to do something like this, to do something different from what the other developers are otherwise in front of you asking to do. And they may have every legitimate reason to do those projects. This is different, and we want a chance to share that with you.
Sorry, Tom. Okay. All right. So, as David had stated, the site is a little over 21 acres, almost 22 acres. So, to give you some the location and give you some idea of where we are here. So, this is East Main Street coming into 6 here. Here's the old Stone Church Brewery here. So our frontage is this stretch along here on Route 6. As you head north, There's frontage on Strawberry Road, which is here and here. This is a 50-foot right-of-way that, again, that goes up to Route 6. To the west is the Fieldstone Manor project that, of course, doesn't show up on this. And the commercial district starts at this, basically at this point, and heads west. So the site is the existing conditions at the site now. There's a old driveway that comes in off of this location here, basically across from the church. You can see it loops up. There's an old residence that has some history tied to the Lafarge family. It is, at this point, pretty dilapidated, exposed to the weather. So that would be coming out. The site is, at this point, beyond that is all wooded. We've got a DC wetland along the western boundary here. That green shaded area is buffer area. And that wetland extends to the west. It goes on to the Fieldstone Manor property. This is the Mohegan outlet, which runs right back behind all these commercial, the commercial district back here. So as David mentioned, we have 3 buildings which would will house the 144 apartment-style units. Access would be at the same location here off of Route 6, following up basically the existing driveway. We've got a loop road that goes around to service the front of the buildings and to provide access to the Wellness Center, which is this building right here. This is parking for the Wellness Center. You'll notice that we don't show any surface parking. Most of the parking, well, all of the parking for the units, at least one parking space per unit, is located underneath the building. So we're probably going to end up adding some for the overflow, but a majority of the parking is underneath the buildings, and that reduces the amount of impervious surfaces on the project site. We're showing some conceptual areas for stormwater. Beyond our project limit, we're showing an emergency access out to Strawberry. That would be a gated access, so it's not intended to be used as part of the everyday ingress and egress into the project. The darker green areas, that's all buffer area. There's in the RSP2 zone, the building setback is 50 feet off the property lines. And this buffer area will range from 50 to 100 feet off the back of these residences along Strawberry Road. And as you can see, this area is intended for the most part to stay vegetated, as well as this area back along this side here to the west. There's public sewers available for the project. The county sewer main goes right through the property right here in this corner here, and we'll be tapping into that. There'll be public water and all other public utilities will be brought into the site. As far as the sustainable development study, there was an 80-foot right-of-way as part of the Fieldstone Manor subdivision, which goes out to Lexington Avenue, that was deeded for future extension of a bypass road. We're going to continue that 80-foot right-of-way through the site to allow that possibility to occur. Of course, that has to be visited, and it has to be designed and so on, but we've incorporated that in, and that would run along this edge right here. And as I said, a nice part of this is we've taken the parking and we've put it under the buildings. That really leaves a lot of open space on the site to be landscaped and used by the tenants that are gonna be living on the property, the residents that are gonna be living on the property. At this point, I'm gonna ask Chris Raffaelli to come up. He's the project architect, and he can take you through, his site plan and architectural renderings. You gotta hold on to it.
Sure.
It's going.
Sure. Good evening, Chris Raffaelli with Studio Architecture. So as Joe and David mentioned, we have 3 buildings. Across the 3 buildings, there are 144 units. Each building sits on top of a parking lot with 3 floors of units on top of it. The largest unit here is building number 2, which is the one here in the middle that houses 50 units. The other 2 are currently sitting at 47 units. So the unit types, we have 5 different unit types in each of the buildings, kind of scattered, ranging from a single bedroom, single toilet to 2-bedroom, 2.5 toilets. And the square footage ranges from about 750 to just over 1,200, depending on where it is in the building. Not all unit types are exactly the same size because of the shape that we have. The buildings will be entry at grade here where the sidewalk is shown. I'm looking at building number 1 now. Entry at grade, elevator for all of the floors, including down to the parking lot. The buildings are centrally loaded with balconies and exterior views to both sides of both buildings. In the center here is the Wellness Center, which I think David will talk more about its function, but this is sort of the community place here in the middle. How do I page next? Scrolling. Oops, sorry. So these are just representative of floor plans of above grade levels. They're sort of repetitive in their floor plan. These are elevations of the Wellness Center that'll be currently being contemplated as a single-story building, a slab on grade. Elevations of buildings 1 and 3, they're actually identical buildings. So you can see the patios, some different materials and fenestrations. Let me just skip to the rendering view. So this is the floor plate of the Wellness Center. I'll let David pick that up. And so here's kind of a view of this top view is sort of looking that northwest, I believe. Here's the Wellness Center here, building 3 in the background, 2 and building 1 with the loop road, and this is the extension that goes out to Strawberry. It also services the parking lot for building number 1. Here's another view looking more westerly at the Wellness Center with building 3, 2, and 1 across the background there.
You can throw that up there. Is Ken still here? Ken, I wrote down one of your comments that I thought was meaningful for what we're been trying to talk about as a group, as a team, finding the right balance. We actually think this project does achieve a different type of balance than a standard active adult condominium townhouse project. It's different from a real state-of-the-art assisted living with communal dining and real aid and medical care inside the main building. This is independent living. This is age-restricted senior independent living, but it's a rental, not a condominium. It gives an opportunity for Yorktown residents, for veterans, for anyone throughout the county who wishes to live in this setting, have the ability to enjoy the benefits of being in Yorktown, proximate to Mohegan Lake, We think it offers the community something new and different. In terms of this building, this is really one of the unique aspects of the project. You've got literally across the sidewalk, across the circulation roads from you, you have the ability to go to what we would normally call the clubhouse, yes. But if you need a physical therapist, or if you need a physician, or you need someone to do a wellness check, they can and they will be able to be in that building. The marketplace seems to be looking for something like this. It's different from other senior-oriented housing, and we really would like the chance to explore it further with the town board. We can't go anywhere with this project unless you're interested in the possibility of rezoning the site to an RSP2. Again, I started and I will end with, I'm aware of what you've got in front of you. A number of different projects of different types, a number of things on the Route 6 corridor that I'm sure are presenting legitimate challenges for your board. We got a site here that's calling out for something. It's probably not a site that really should be another retail location at a challenged point along Route 6. It's not particularly a site that calls out for single-family housing of any type right in this area. It's a real good transitional use in terms of some kind of multifamily rental housing. Would love, all of us would love to get some thoughts and reactions from you.
I have a bunch of thoughts, and I think I might need Mr. Tegeter up front, because he might jump in. So, you have a hurdle to overcome with DOT.
Acknowledged.
And we have a hurdle to overcome with looking at the traffic. Now, I know when we were looking at development here with the overlay district, we did sort of a little, and actually not only that, but well, now it was DeVito project, but now it's Boniello project behind the Roma building. We looked at the traffic as a whole unit. And I think that's something that we need to really address and start to get some traffic studies that don't just look at yours or Creative Living or AMS, but something that's more comprehensive to the area. Now, one of the things you mentioned, which jumps to mind, is the bypass. So that bypass, I know I was talking to Mr. Tegeter, was supposed to run through Cortland and all the way down. John, where was that supposed to come out?
It's supposed to go, John, come up, but John and I have talked about this because I've been involved in projects in Cortland on the other side of Lexington, and we've talked about this. It was supposed to go to Lexington, cross through Lexington, and come out down towards the Cortland Town Center, down at the kind of the bottom of the incline. As a result of some things that have been done in Cortland and taken place in Cortland, I think Linda Puglisi basically put the block in on that actually happening. That happened quite a number of years ago, possibly, Susan, when you were
I remember the
supervisor.
problems. Cortland didn't, we wanted it and Cortland didn't.
Correct.
And that was a problem.
Correct. So despite that, Mr. Supervisor, Joe and I talked about it at the outset, and Joe said, I'm going to show it. I'm going to leave it here. I'm not going to block that 80-foot right-of-way on this property. So we're preserving it. Will it ever get built?
So,
Yes, John.
So apparently it cannot go, it cannot go through Cortland anymore. Is that what you're saying? They've developed the route and blocked it?
I'm not going to say it can't go through Cortland, but I will tell you that there is a commercial development there now that will prevent it from coming out right across from where it would make the most sense, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So, but I would say it's not fully, blocked
Right.
by some of the things that they were doing, which, by the way, they were afraid that it was actually going to draw traffic through their quadrant. So, very, you know.
So let's just follow the thought process. If it came out onto Lexington, I don't know, and once again, that'd be the traffic study, how much more it can access over there and how much more Lexington can take. But you did mention there is at Fieldstone that bypass, and that's open. What about the Islamic Community Center, or does it
It goes right by it.
goes by it,
Served
through
there
it?
as well, right?
Yes.
Okay, and that land is still unblocked, so there could be.
With this, what they just talked about tonight, you will have it from Route 6 to
All the
Lexington.
way to Lexington.
Okay.
Which is why we did this.
Right.
Okay.
And then it is potentially possible to get across and then at some point down the hill, at the very least. Cortland still would like to bypass Barmore Hill. They have that in their mind, so.
Where is that exactly?
Barmore Hill is the big hill. Once you go
Oh.
through the light on, across Lexington, that's the hill. That's Barmore Hill.
Oh, okay. I never heard it referred to that. I've heard it referred to with a lot of four-letter words when
Yes.
people are stuck in traffic there.
That's
but
the,
never
that's the
Barmore.
cleaned up version.
Okay.
Yes.
I've sat many an hour on that road in my past when I worked in the Cortland Town Center.
We all have, that's for sure.
Yes. Okay. I think you spoke about unit sizes. I do have concern. You mentioned under building parking.
Yes.
And just with the EVs and battery charging, I don't necessarily feel those are very safe under buildings, but that's just something to look at. But I think that becomes part of the future of a lot of these plans, is having that accessibility for
Clearly.
that.
Just before you leave that topic, Chris, would our garages be open air on one side? Or- On the downhill side, I thought they were. So there would be open air ventilation for that tuck under garage. And one of the things that we were trying to do is use the topo on the site to create the tuck under parking, to minimize the impervious surface area, and have as much permeability and green as we could.
And my final question for now, the wellness center, the doctors and PTs and OTs and that envisionment, is that people with permanent offices? Is that like, I need my PT to come in, so there's a space available? What is the thought process,
So Michael will correct me if I'm wrong. I think the thought process is not permanent offices. It's office space that people can rotate through. So it's not a full-on medical center, but it provides a real ease of access for physicians and for folks living there who are patients and want to see their physician. So people would rotate through there.
I know like PT and OT is usually easier to get into, but nowadays physicians' offices are a lot more difficult, and there's a lot of concern about that in the community getting to doctors. And I know if there was medical on site there, that'll actually help take some of the burden off of the regular community, but it seems like it's more just like set up appointments and.
Correct.
And I come in.
And again, just as an important footnote, as someone who had a dad graduate from independent living to assisted living to memory care, and I, as the QCG, the qualified caregiver within parameter or proximity to my father, I would have to go get my dad, pick him up, and transport him to any variety of physicians for medical appointments. It was wonderful. We did it. We pulled it off. Having the ability to have a senior who you want to make sure is being well cared for and have that kind of ease of access, it's a different concept. It's why we think the marketplace is starting to try to figure out maybe there's a better way to do this, and we're getting interest. And one of the things that is attracting potential development interest is this building that can be around or in center of a cluster of residential apartments.
I have two quick questions. Like, who manages that facility? Is this you're gonna go out and get an outside management company to do all this? And the second question is, how do you predicate the costs, going back to, what Ken's looking for? Or the rental's gonna be what? What's that formula?
Michael, do you want to handle that?
Good evening. I'm Michael Orfici. I've been working with Quinn and his family on the redevelopment prospects for the site. I think your question was, number one, was is it managed?
Who manages it?
That
Is
would
it-
be part of the ownership of the property. They would,
Okay.
they would integrate this into the facility.
So they have a vested interest in,
Right.
okay.
So it's all part of benefit for the senior community,
Yeah.
as opposed, where one of the aspects of the component also is a home health care program, where if the resident in the rental unit wants to get health care and aid, they can do it right through the management company, so they're cared for. It's an age-in-place environment, an opportunity for seniors to transition from their residential homes and stay within the community of Yorktown. That's the objective. Secondarily, the pricing structure, we really haven't worked out yet, but we're trying to hit the target of seniors that are retired, school teachers, police, fire, municipal workers, veterans that are retired. That's the concept, is to keep people within the community. Lived here for 30 years, raised their families, 40 years, but to bring them into this building with an opportunity, not a long-term commitment like a typical CCRC, but and recognize we're looking at active seniors, of which I think I qualify now. I found out that the Chico's has a Wednesday, senior citizen discount, and I shop on Wednesdays now. So, but I sold my home in the South Salem area, and it was hard to find something. And I've been involved in the development of huge CCRC facilities, assisted living, skilled nursing facilities. That model's not working anymore for an active adult, and an active adult that doesn't want to move out of the community because the kids are still here. So the rental, we have to work out. What Joe came up with parking under the building was a huge element because, it takes away from the site issues, but it also allows them access right from there. They don't have to walk to an outside parking area. It's weather covered. You can come in, get up an elevator, go up to your unit. You had some concepts with the wellness center, just to clarify. That's also part of the community lifestyle, where they can go in, a senior can go in, they can play cards, they can have a Pilates class, there'll be a physical therapy area. You can get a lot of your needs cared for right within that community. And again, you're not tied to it. If in 5 years your lease is up and you want to move to Florida, Arizona, you can move at that time. I'm staying in Westchester. That's why I want to see something like this happen.
So does this management company have other facilities? So let's just say that they're looking for a PT or an OT or something like that, and you can't find anybody. Can you pull from another bucket of medical?
Yes. There's a number of related healthcare service companies that are involved, could be involved, the physical therapy, the medical side. If the community endorses as much of the need for on-site medical, doctoring, wellness checks, pharmacy prescriptions, coordination with your medicines and so forth, that could change the wellness center to a regulated small space, so that actually a resident doctor could come in, be hired by the community, and be there for the benefit of the entire community. But again, it's not assisted living. It is not a skilled nursing facility. It's not a CCRC with an entrance fee that, you sell your home, you pay $1 million, and you get the opportunity to live here with a healthcare insurance policy. This is a total flexible environment with the goal that the senior, myself included, the senior can
I think you're older than me, Pat.
when you want to adjust the rooms, you want to adjust the rooms. Chris is working on designs where the bathrooms are designed without the curbs, without the blockages and so forth that you have to change in your home to enjoy it. It's all about being able to stay culturally in your community that you're accustomed to, and be able to you asked another question. I don't think I answered it. There are a number of different organizations that have built these around the country. And the key element of the wellness center is to be tied to a community. Otherwise, the model doesn't work. There are none in New York State now. New York State's been a little bit in the dark ages over typical regulated, Department of Health, Department of Insurance regulated packages like a CCRC or that type. They're anxious to see something in New York, and the market is there. Our next step will be to do a full market study if we think we can move forward with the town of Yorktown on this site.
You know, we've been talking about the wellness center, and you had underground parking for the regular buildings. I didn't really see parking for the wellness center.
There's parking just adjacent to the entrance.
Oh, okay, was it, okay. Yeah, I can't see that.
Left and right.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
The grade to the side there.
There you go. Ah, thank you.
There's the parking for the wellness center.
Yes, I wanted to turn down the lights.
Might need,
The
a
clerk
couple of
was
golf
worried about
carts running
someone-
around when the resident wants to get over there, but that's fine.
All right.
There's also, in the wellness center, there's also a transportation office, so that the resident can get down to the shopping centers, can come back, without having to take a car out.
So you would have like shuttle service available?
Have a van, yeah. There's be probably one or two vans for this size, maybe two, more than likely for this size environment.
That actually helps to mitigate some traffic as well.
They can get to
If you have, like,
downtown, they can go to Uncle Giuseppe's, they can come back. It's the way it should be. It should be an environment where if you want to stay in your community, you can. That's what we're trying to achieve.
So in terms of next steps.
Can I have some questions?
Go right ahead,
Yeah.
please, sorry,
Okay.
Susan.
As probably the most senior member of this board, who has done research about these places for my own self, okay? There's a gap, confusion between a clubhouse and a wellness center. You talk about physical therapy, which I've had to use over time, as many of us probably have, okay? It's not just on a table, okay? There's equipment involved. If you have medical services, there is equipment involved. So it's not just providing a room where somebody is going to go. So I need a little bit more clarification on whether John Smith, physical therapist, is going to be at that place and outfit that room or rooms for physical therapy. The same thing with medical service. You need basic supplies. You just go to any doctor's office, and there's cabinets with basic supplies that are there. So that becomes more of a permanent facility bordering, I want to say, on a commercial operation. Okay, it's kind of different. So I need some clarification on that. And will those facilities be only usable to the residents of this community and not for outsiders?
So every one of those, Susan, was a terrific question, and we can structure it in a number of different ways, and we can bring in, and if we advance, at a future meeting, we would have the end provider sitting here in the front row with us answering those questions. So the issue for us at this juncture, pre-submission, nothing finalized, is to just determine really whether we've got something that you'd be interested in exploring, that we should go and do a comprehensive traffic analysis and confirm that we can solve that issue satisfactorily. And then we can decide how we skin the matter, Susan, in terms of how permanent are these medical offices, how flexible, are they really limited in terms of what the physicians and the physical therapists can do in terms of just stretching and simple wellness checks, which don't require equipment, or are they going to be more advanced? The little bit that we've heard from the marketplace, they could move in one direction or another. We have 10,000 square feet in that building right now, conceptually. We clearly don't want to preclude the healthy, well seniors from playing cards, going to Pilates, using a fitness center. That's clearly...
That's clubhouse stuff.
That's clearly clubhouse stuff.
That's where...
Absolutely. So
I think you've got to decide, because I look at it one way as RSP2 with a clubhouse.
Correct.
All right? Or something with a wellness center, which is a commercial operation, which is different, which makes it more of a mixed-use kind of thing.
Right.
And the more you get into a wellness center with all of these facilities, you're not talking active adults 55 and over. You're talking the older.
somewhere in the, so
So
the
I
average
think-
age, Michael, was, we said upper 60s to low 70s. So this is designed to hit a demographic and an age group that's below assisted living and independent living. Independent living, average age, my clients tell me 82. Assisted living, average age, my clients tell me 87. Because again, you've got folks that are well into their 90s. This is independent, regular rental for seniors, but you're right. There can be some that will have more of a condition and require more medical attention, and some who will be out enjoying everyday normal lifestyle. It is clear, you are helping make our point, which is what we're proposing, the concept that they're presenting is something really different.
Okay, so one that has to be clarified.
100%.
Okay, the second thing is to pick up on your concern about Route 6. I'm less concerned about the bypass, which I think
Has bypassed us?
Yes, good point. But to pick up on a point, the concern of the planning board about some holistic study of the Route 6 corridor. Because you've got AMS, you've got Navajo, then you now have this, plus a few little things in between. That is maybe more of a need that we have to do before we, as part of this. And then whether the Wyant Roma building model works again. That one was easier. You had developers, and you both had Joe Rena working on both. Here you have different. Well, you've got two. You're doing no. You're not doing Navajo. No. So you got three different engineers. You know. Well, you've got somebody else is doing Navajo. You're doing AMS. Okay. So you've got two people doing this. So I think that's something that even as we deal with AMS and Navajo, and now this, we have to think about how to put that together.
Understood.
Okay. And then the other point is, can John give us some history? Because there was a project like this proposed many years ago. And John could
Before
just-
John gives us a history lesson, where I was talking about parking before, where is the visitor parking? Because you had mentioned going to
Yeah, absolutely.
help your dad, no?
Yeah, as I mentioned in the presentation, we're probably gonna have to add some
Okay.
additional parking exterior, but it's not gonna be a huge amount, but visitor parking.
All right, so you're going to put.
That'll
it
be
in-
exterior parking.
Gotcha.
Surface.
John, do you want to give some of that history? Actually, it's Doctor now. We promoted him last week on Thursday.
Yes. I prefer to be addressed as doctor. History, in 2016 and maybe a little bit before that, and it went on for a little bit but not very long, was another similar proposal. It was a senior living proposal. I think the owner was the same, although I've only met Quinn recently. But discussion points were the same. The bypass was discussed. Ingress points and ingress and egress points were discussed. Strawberry Road, Route 6 coming out in that particular position was discussed. So I think the history is the same, and history will repeat itself a little bit here, I think. I don't know if you want me to get any further detail in that, Susan?
No, I think the issue of Strawberry Road came up back then. Now you're saying it will just be emergency because Strawberry Road, I don't think, can take any more traffic. The issue also came up with AMS about only one access road into a major development, and that's an issue. And here you've got the same problem. In addition to the problem of DOT onto Route 6, you've got the single access. So those are other issues, to consider.
And the interim history since then was a
Solar farm. Solar farm, yeah.
Proposal.
Solar farm, yeah. Yeah, I think the number of units is considerably less in this proposal than the original, which even then reduced it, and they just kind of went away.
Yep.
But that concept of some kind of wellness in between was there back then.
Sorry, it was also, there was a nursing home.
You have to
Yeah,
come up
that
to
was,
the.
that was yeah, it was more of assisted living or something.
There was an assisted living
Yeah.
component to
Yeah.
that, so there was a lot more going on to it. It was a fairly larger structure at the same time, too.
I just tossed that file from over the
I still have
weekend.
one in my basement, so if you want it, I'll bring it back.
No, I tossed it. I tossed it on Sunday, and then on Monday, I got the email that you were coming back.
Well, hopefully garbage pickup didn't happen just yet.
Okay.
Luciana, did you have any questions? No? Okay, thank you.
So if I may, for a moment, as Susan said, and I think that you heard, the planning board did discuss the Route 6 corridor last night,
Okay.
pursuant to a number of these proposals that are in various stages of review. So, and I think generally their desire and hope is, they're going to send you a note, a memo, is to do some sort of cohesive and complete look at traffic, looking at all of these together and what it does to the entire corridor. So, which I think is probably a good idea. I'm not sure exactly how that will work, but I think it's probably doable. It may be even a little bit easier than what we experienced with the Roma building and the Wyant. In fact, I'm hoping.
And how did we, refresh me on how we ended up with that final? Was that paid for by the different applicants that were looking?
There was the two applicants, they got together and paid Phil Greeley to do it. And he looked at a bunch of stuff, but I think it was those two predominantly that I know of.
I thought there was a third involved.
There may have been, but it was, the Triangle may have
Yeah,
been a little bit
Triangle
involved, yeah.
And the Pure Salon there
Yes.
as well may have been involved.
Right. But I think this may be a little bit easier to pull off, so, and we can talk about who's doing the study and so on and so forth. Of course, I think our consultant should be involved in that at some point.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Can you put together some options, some bullet points on how we could proceed, if we want to proceed, so that we can discuss
Yeah,
this, and maybe at a September meeting, we can.
Which are
look-
getting fairly full, but we could definitely try for.
Well, if we can go back to a fourth meeting, that would make it easier,
Right.
okay? We could get more done.
Yeah.
And if I could put on my Doctor of History hat again for a moment.
Not your
One-
dental history.
No. So with the bypass, I just want to touch on that. So Susan said, well, for instance, a gut reaction and her knowledge of the area is Strawberry has enough traffic, can't take any more. We know what happens as it goes through the village of Mohegan. Adding to Route 6, the number of apartments that we're looking at will certainly have, I think, a visceral impact. And so imagine for a moment that in the late 50s and the 60s, DOT and the people around Yorktown and Cortland and other areas didn't have the foresight to go through the pain of creating Route 6 as we know it today, which I'm sure everyone here will say is overwhelmed already. So I think that we have to take off what is standard for today in our society is a little bit of cynicism and look forward for the future, that we can't hamstring ourselves by some of the more normal things that we deal with that are difficult to deal with, such as wetlands and people's property rights and so on and so forth, the whole gamut of that. It's a regional problem. The things that are going to happen here need to be looked at, and they need to have a good solution. I'm not saying the bypass will solve it or that you have to do it, but I'm saying at some point it may be necessary. So I don't think that we should look at it in any other way than trying to keep our options, all of our options, open for the future. And I know it's in the future. I know it's difficult. But right now, and what we've seen over a number of years, is what we deal with and how we hamstring ourselves. So I just want to make that point. Because I know that a lot of people approach it by saying, that's never going to happen. And once you say that, you're dooming
You
yourself.
think you can or you think you can't,
Yeah.
you're right.
So that's
Just
my
explain.
Doctor of Philosophy and History speech for tonight.
So I know Linda has retired in Cortland.
Yes.
Now we have Dr. Becker there.
Right.
Who is their planner in Cortland? Do you know
Chris Kehoe.
Chris Kehoe?
Yes.
Do you think you could have a conversation with Chris, and maybe we could have a meeting with Dr. Becker?
I'm glad you said that. There is, I don't know if you recall, Harcum had brought down a good chunk of money for a regional corridor study for Route 6 and east-west routes through our 3 towns and all the way over to Connecticut. Now, a year or so ago, we were participating with Cortland and Peekskill and DOT, who was coming down and doing a little pony show, dog and pony show, to sort of find out what the communities were thinking. And they have since gone away with the pot of money, and we don't know what's happening with that study. But I recommend speaking, and I think it's a good idea to go and speak with Dr. Becker and their planner, and maybe even Peekskill, to sort of find out what DOT is doing in that regard. So if we're going to embark on having these guys and some of their colleagues in the development world, cobble together a little traffic study, I think DOT should be part of it. And DOT should, be talking to the communities a little more than they have in the last year or so. And I think Dr. Becker probably has some good knowledge on that because he set this up, I think, a year or so ago. So I'm glad you mentioned that.
Yeah, because first I've heard of this study, which would be good. You might want to explain, I don't know if the residents understand, we keep talking about the bypass. My recollection of the bypass was that when you were coming down Route 6, just when it narrows into the 2 lanes, is that through traffic would go on the bypass.
Mm-hmm.
And it would go, and then go into wherever it would end in Cortland. So that would eliminate the traffic tie-up on the commercial portion of East Main Street. That's what is meant by the bypass. So through traffic going west on Route 6 would bypass the commercial strip of East Main Street by going around this area and then exiting at some place in Cortland. That's what it's meant.
Yes.
But I think that we just talk as if we know what we're talking about, but maybe it needed an explanation.
Right. And Cortland Town Center and even the new one across the street is now really a regional draw. So it brings people from Putnam County and other places all the way down to that spot, in particular because of Walmart. So when you add these other, this population here and other places, it's coming through to go to Walmart. That's a destination.
It's coming through East Main Street in Mohegan.
Coming through East
John,
Main Street.
John, I'm
Mohegan.
thinking that perhaps in addition to Dr. Becker, their planner, Peekskill, this might be, Dana, Pete,
Yes.
Matt, possibly Lawler, see if we can get even Senate, because, there's this crush for housing.
Mm-hmm.
And, the really big block is some of this traffic, and being able to get, there's some very valid points that have been brought up in a lot of our courtesy of the floor, getting to shopping, getting to doctors, what if there's an emergency, can't get through the traffic, especially where Route 6 narrows, unless you're in an ambulance, but even there.
And the safety as well.
Right. So, maybe a round table on this regional is something that we could look to set up rather quickly,
Sure.
hopefully, and get some involvement in that. But I think it's a really interesting project in what it's offering. I've dealt with a relative of mine, my cousin's widow, where she was in first she was in an assisted living. Then she went to Drum Hill, which is independent. Then she ended up getting COVID, ending up bedridden, and ended up in a nursing home for the last, or actually it was more of an assisted living, but she was bedridden, so might as well have been a nursing home, and spent the last couple of years of her life in that situation. So I think that if she had that active community when she was a little younger, it might have helped prevent
Forestall it.
some of the decline, the physical decline as well. And the fact that it's rental and there's definitely an affordability factor in that, rather than having to lay out $900,000 for a townhouse that you're buying. And what, honestly, at 70, 75 years old, some people don't want to own it. They don't want to own anything.
And you want to spend some of your money before you leave it for your children, so I think that's...
I told my daughter I want to spend all of it.
If it's tied up in a house, they get it.
So I personally think there's some good benefits here, but I think there are a lot of issues too.
A lot of questions about the wellness clubhouse part.
I'm more concerned about just getting
Plus
the logistics of the infrastructure.
Well, the traffic and, yeah, the impact on just Route 6, yeah. So that's a separate issue. You know, whether it was any kind of multifamily housing would be an issue, you know, on that site.
Well, I know this has been a long time for the project evolution, but I think there's a couple more Ts to cross, Is to dot, and move along with it. So I'll talk to John a little more detail tomorrow about setting stuff up. Dave, if you have any contacts that you want to, you know, try to move some of these people, yep. I think you do business in most of the areas we're speaking about.
So I deal with Dr. Becker and Chris Kehoe and that staff quite a bit over in Cortland, so I'm happy to coordinate with John and try to push everybody. Assuming my client tells me to do that, I will do that.
All right. I think maybe even talking to John Ravitz might be helpful as well from Business Council of Westchester.
Makes sense, yes. They could be very helpful. Good. Good to see you all. Thank you for the time.
Thank you. All right. So, little conversation about the field home mansion reuse, which actually this is a pretty interesting idea for that too, isn't it, John? Maybe you guys want to listen to this and see if there's anything, see if it's something you want to invest in with the old field home building.
That's it. You know, that thanks for making that connection, because would be the purpose of doing the RFP.
Wonder where you get that idea.
That might be a very good location, come to think of it.
From you? Have a good night, Joe.
Hey, Joe.
Charlie Ann, have a good evening. You okay, Brian?
What did we say, that we're losing all our audience?
Well,
It's 10 o'clock.
field home. It's very offensive.
3 other important issues on the agenda.
Yeah, we're gonna do it. He's not going anywhere.
Oh, and the important resolutions.
Did Sarah leave?
Do you want this up on the,
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
do you want,
So, I'm sorry?
you want it up on the board?
You want to put it up or?
Yeah.
Okay.
What are you trying to put up on the board? Oh, okay.
There it is. Want me to start?
I'll start. So we want to have a little discussion about the field home, the actual house itself, house/offices, I should say, which was the Field family. They used it as a home back in the early 1900s. I thought maybe late 1800s.
Late 18th to early 19th.
Yep, as a home for people in need. The Field family was actually married into the Van Cortlandt family, so there's a lot of local history there. The building right now is part of the Catherine Street project by the Toll Brothers, and they wanted to separate that building out and instead of tearing it down because of historical value, and offer it to the town. And we are trying to figure out what the heck to do with it. As the town should not be a landlord and own that building, we've found out the hard way in our past what happens to a building that the town has and can't maintain. So we want to talk about some adaptive use ideas.
What square feet is it?
I have no idea how many
It's
square
large.
feet it is. It's big.
It's
It's very
large.
big.
It's
It's
large.
actually three separate buildings, and it's actually the first and biggest local construction done with unreinforced concrete. So it has some real historical significance there in the engineering of it, as well as the building itself. There's an old chapel attached. Then there's the offices, the former offices, which were also bedrooms back in the day, and then they have the front structure with the pillars. I don't remember what that was used for, but there's a lot of, it was probably like an old hall at one point and some different things there.
Okay. So the Toll Brothers project, they are in contract for the piece of property to buy from the field home, which includes this building. Okay? And their proposal, which is for townhouse units, it includes subdividing about 2.5 acres around this building and giving it to the town. And they are, along with that, will give some money for some type of maintenance and things like that. So we asked them during the review process to produce a study of the building to evaluate its condition, its needs, and some potential reuses. And so we have a little summary of what that analysis came up with. They came up with 3 options. I'm not telling you that these are the only options, and I'm not here to tell you that it's the only uses. But certainly in their professional experience have come up with these because they know other examples of them and think that this is possibly lends itself to these types of uses. And the first one and by the way, it's Stephen Tilley, architects from Dobbs Ferry, that did the study, and he's fairly well known around the county for his historical work. And option 1 is like a work and live here incubator, and you'll find that in this report on page 10. Basically, the entire building is retained. You have apartments, studios, and along that you may have a studio to do your work, which can be some types of crafts, light industrial production of products, those kinds of things, or even office type. It's similar to the Peekskill Artist Lofts. Now I can't tell you exactly where they are. They're I think sprinkled around Peekskill, and I also know that a fellow that developed Wynwood Oaks, Ken Carney, which was mentioned here, has also done a building in Peekskill which has some work-live spaces, which I've actually toured. Option 2 is called Make Here, and it's mixed light industrial. It seems very similar, but one thing that proposes to do is to demolish the chapel. So you would have the mid-section of the building and the front section of the building. Again, it becomes studios, art studios, offices, light industrial workshops, a potential childcare facility, and this is similar to like the Hat Factory in Peekskill, Hudson River Landing in Dobbs Ferry, Bridge Street in Irvington, if you know those.
Yeah.
It's not
There's also-
not residential. It's mostly.
I think Beacon has a couple of areas like that too now.
I'm sure that they do. And their option 3 is called Work Here. Now, these are all very similar. So the chapel and the middle section are demolished. It's for offices and independent workspaces, and that's the front of kind of the building that faces Catherine Street, and that's all that would be retained. In the last approval that Field Home obtained for their independent living project, that was what was going to happen. The middle section of the chapel was going to be removed, and the front-facing part of the building was going to be retained and hopefully reused. And the reason for that was, again, there was a lot of unknowns with where to take the building, and the smaller spaces seemed to be, something that could be filled more easily. Now, we had one of our historic consultants look at what Stephen Tilley did and look at the building and do his own evaluation, really evaluating Stephen Tilley's work, And he came up with, he agreed with the choices, but I think he expanded a little bit. So for instance, with the option one, he didn't modify it. It's a good option, uses the whole building. He's also a historic guy and would love to see it retained in its 100% form. Option two, which is the make here, which takes the chapel off, he's suggesting, well, maybe you can keep the chapel and use it for special events such as film screenings and guest lectures, concerts. That could serve also the neighborhood that is there in Glassbury Court, and which will be there in the Toll Brothers development. He points out a former pantry with limited cooking facilities connected to the East Pavilion could potentially serve the child care facility during the day and the special events at night. So he's thinking out of the box a little bit. Option three, he basically says, retaining the chapel for special events as above. He also got into some other uses, such as a hotel use, which Stephen Tilley's report didn't mention, which you could renovate the kitchen, the basement and pantry within the East Pavilion, breakfast and dining rooms within the North and East Pavilions, a tap room introduced within the original kitchen within the basement, and a restored chapel for weddings and other special events. So I think from those two fellows, I think you start to see some creative thinking, and there seems to be a lot of potential for it. They both say that the building is in sturdy and good condition. It does need work. There is probably some asbestos removal that needs to take place, but basically the buildings are solid and can be, from the condition that they're in, restored without a lot of reconstruction or rework. It's really redoing finishes and bringing things up to code. So, Gregory Dietrich, by the way, is the architectural historical consultant that we used. Also got into a little bit of the funding and what the building's historical quality is, which he claims is probably eligible for National Register listing, as did our 2006 reconnaissance survey, among other buildings. And he went on to say that if you get it listed, it opens up some good funding mechanisms. One is the Historic Rehabilitation Tax Credit, and the other one is the Environmental Protection Fund Grant Program for Parks, Preservation, and Heritage. And his description was that they have some significant funding. So that could help make this potentially happen. So I think that's where we are right now. Both of these reports are in the last year and a half, maybe 2 years tops. The Stephen Tilley one is the older one.
So I know we should be looking at either a request for proposals or even a request for interest.
Yeah.
To see if anyone has it. What is a normal type of thing for this? Because I've been thinking, say it's dedicated to the town, and then we would probably make an agreement where people dress it up. We're not going to take that on. Is it usually something that's done under a pilot, something that's done with regular taxes? If we own it, are there no taxes? And then it's just fee, simple type?
Those are all questions that are open-ended. I don't know the answer to all of those. I think there's a lot of different ways you can go. I mean, I think you can actually work with someone and enter an agreement, and the end result is the disposition of the property to that person as an owner, provided it's landmarked and that they get the grants, and everything works out, and then they operate the building. That's one way to look at it. Or it could be a licensee or a lessee.
So quick question, if you landmark it or register it, does that limit the use of it?
No.
No?
It doesn't limit the use of it.
You could still do a hotel / banquet hall /
I think you could. There are requirements. There are restoration requirements. Those are mostly architectural. It doesn't necessarily limit the use. Landmarking and being on the register doesn't prevent it from coming off the register if it falls into disrepair or is altered in a way that doesn't carry its historic significance any longer. So, but you can use it in many different ways.
It does add, though, to the burden of the work, following specific detail as well as finding appropriate, like glass and wood and
Appropriate carpenter.
I think what we need to do is, those two reports have given certain options, and I think there are other options. For example, it could just be housing is one option. That's why I think it's time. This has been hanging around for a long time, over a year, that Toll Brothers has said they want to give us the house, and Ed said we don't want to own the house. All right. I pull out something. We don't know what's out there. We don't know the market. Okay. Tilly had suggestions. Dietrich has some suggestions. I think if we do an RFP and leave it very open, we have this building, you can give them those reports, because Tilly certainly talks about the condition of the building. We mentioned the historic aspect of it. Whether it should be landmarked or not should be left to who is going to deal with it, because it has some pluses for financing, but it has some negatives, because then you would have to do it in a historic way. So that would depend. I pulled out an RFP that we did a few years ago for a town parcel, totally different type of a parcel, but it just gave me a sense of the flexibility of what to ask for. The town is interested in a potential partnership with a private entity or individual to either purchase the property from the town for development or rehabilitative purposes, or to enter some sort of public-private partnership with the town. In other words, leaving it totally open-ended. The use is totally open-ended. The ownership aspect of it is totally open-ended. This is the building. Come and look at it. Tell us what you'd like to do with it. And then we send it out as broadly as possible to all kinds of potential users, real estate people, okay, housing people, and then we see what we get. Because otherwise we keep talking and talking and talking. So we need to get this RFP out. We are not committed to anything, okay? It doesn't cost us anything. We just...
Well, that's what we were just talking about.
So I think
I have
if
a
we
couple
can,
questions
if
for
we
Attorney.
can direct
Well, in that-
John to start to
Yeah.
draft something. A lot of an RFP is boilerplate stuff. It's the scope of what you're asking for. That's maybe, one or two paragraphs, and then you just attach the documents so they see what they're proposing. And you say, tell us what you'd like to do,
Well, there may be another intermediate step,
which is,
which is there are firms, whether they be design firms, construction firms, developing firms, that do adaptive reuse.
Yeah.
And they're well versed in it and experienced and know the market. And it may be wise to have them on board with a little bit of guidance and advice on how to do it. And, Stephen Tilley and Gregory Dietrich may be a starting point to help us find those folks. I know of a couple of firms, not personally, I don't have personal interaction with them, but I know firms that do that kind of thing as well. So that's a potential intermediate step or an additional step, parallel step.
I think it would be more time effective if it was a parallel step, so you let them know that you're doing this RFP, and then they could reach out to the people that they know who might be interested. Because we're running short on time, and I think with the rezoning, and Toll Brothers is pushing to get the rezoning done, and I think we have to know the disposition. We should have a better idea of the disposition of the house and this 2+ acres as part of our decision on the rezoning. So we can do it now and reach out to those kinds of firms and anybody else with, it really needs, the key thing is who you're going to send that RFP out to, okay? And it has to be broad, because the potential is very broad on what can be used. But I think it should be done, and it should be done now. And going an intermediary step is only gonna delay it more. And then we're gonna come up with Toll Brothers saying, guys, I need a decision. And we're not gonna be ready to make any kind of decision because we're waiting for this intermediary step before we go to the next step.
I'm not sure of that. I mean, the an intermediary step may guarantee a greater success, which is not a delay. So I'm
Why
not,
can't
I'm
we
not
do it in
certain.
parallel?
I'm not arguing for one or the other.
Yeah.
Parallel, I think, may be fine. And I just want to point out that after the rezone, they still have a site plan to go to and a subdivision in order to actually deed it to the town. So there's a couple other steps that they have to go through yet, so.
Yeah, I know that can't happen. So I would like to see us just make a decision to authorize John to start working on an RFP and so we can get it out possibly in September.
Well, that's why it's on to talk
Yeah.
about. Adam, do you foresee any, I don't think there are any deed restrictions on the property, are there, John?
Not that I know
All
of.
right.
I think probably we would ask them for some sort of title search as a matter of course anyway, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, certainly, yeah, we would need that before we took it from them. But it would be helpful to know, because if there's a restriction, you wanna put, you need to consider that, and proposers are gonna need to know that. I mean, the better companies will do their own due diligence, but to the extent we have information, we should give it to them.
Is there any issue with us flipping it?
Flipping,
Say Toll gives it to us and then we flip it and sell it to someone.
We could make money,
no,
actually.
there's no,
It could be a revenue generator.
yeah, there's no issue there.
Okay?
Yeah, the sooner we decide this, the sooner we
Yeah.
could possibly get some
I-
money,
I-
and it could be worth a hell of a lot of money for the town coffers.
I think it's also just appropriate to do something with the building, being
Yeah.
the historic value of it and what it is, so.
Well, yeah, I was gonna add in that, the impetus for this is to save the historic
Yeah, oh, sure.
value of the building for its own value. And I think that,
And then, I'll throw it out in case anyone looks back at the meeting. There's some great, we've had many conversations about affordable housing, and some different areas where, we could find something at a market rate per se for affordability. And having the bones of that building already there helps lower construction costs, which makes it more of a possibility. I love the work-live, just, you would have, if you did shops there, I know, like, my wife keeps mentioning the new glass blowing place in, not Cold Spring, Beacon. And the fact that, wouldn't it be cool to be able to, have something like that for those communities right there?
Yeah.
You'd have built-in walkability to have this little mini center, Center for the Arts. Luciana sent me a detailed email or text message with 10 different adaptive uses that she had,
See?
which, Luciana, I'm going to sick you on John when you get back, rather than go over all of them. Some of them deal more with the town ownership, which I am not in favor of once again. But, there may be ways to write it in when proposals come in for some of these ideas, that there is space dedicated for the town to use. Because,
I think there's gonna be a lot of ways you can do,
yeah,
Yeah,
do this.
absolutely.
We have a building.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, John. There's gonna be probably more than one way of using it.
Yep.
And
as
that's
far
what
as
we
us
have to
taking
find
it and
out.
then using it as but like Susan, the way you said, like we could maybe spend it, like, flip it and make money on it. I'm curious to, like, before we flip it and make money on it, like, what are the parameters? Like, what would the town have to, incur to fix it and bring it to code? Or, like, would we want it to be landmarked and then be passing that on to the new buyer? Like,
Right.
it's layered for sure.
Well, yeah, let's see some proposals, and once again, I will repeat it repeatedly. I do not think the town should own it. I don't think it's a fair burden to the taxpayers. The upkeep on a building like that is tremendous. I think we need to look at a way that we're not on the hook for that upkeep, even with just the inspections to make sure for asbestos removal. Mold remediation in the chapel, if they keep that, there's an awful lot to that. And I don't, once again, we own enough property that doesn't generate any tax.
Right. If it's flipped, I would suggest that there are restrictions on alterations and things
Sure.
like that.
These
We're
are-
saving the historic quality, that
Yeah.
should be saved, and that should be part of the project.
But let's get some, let's get some proposals.
So,
Can John, you and Adam work together to draft something so we could look at it?
can we have something by mid-September? I know it's pushing, but,
Probably mid-September.
yeah, let's
We
put a
Early
date down,
September, I
John.
would probably say,
We might need to have it on an October agenda because I feel the daggers coming through Diana.
Well, it's not a public hearing, it's just.
No, I understand,
just a
but we
document.
still need to go through it in transparency for the town and make sure that we're there.
That's true.
Let's figure the
But
first meeting in
While
October then.
John's still here, he did have a look at the record center the other day and the structural issue we're having with the steel. And his recommendation is to reach out to a structural engineer as soon as possible to see if we can get them fixed. So.
Well, I did approach Joe Rena, because I know he does his own structural work, and I queried him, can you look and do some steel work? He says, some of it I can, and he's willing to look at it. And if he feels that he needs to pass it off to someone else, he will, but I think that's a good start.
Okay, then I'll contact him.
Just to round this out, the destruction there, or it's getting late. The problem with the steel there is significant enough that you can't wait on it. So.
Oh, okay.
Right, and just for those that didn't catch that jump, we were talking about the record center behind our police department, which has some structural issues on the steel beams that are holding it up. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, we'll look forward to
Good.
getting that
Yeah.
October, first meeting in October, no later. We gotta move
So-
on it. All right.
So we have, we brought this up before, and I guess we never got the verbiage and never got the moratorium law. But we were looking at a moratorium on the battery storage moratorium. Adam, I know you have something that we could put out for referral.
Ready to go.
I spoke with John Tegeter. There's a lot more information about battery storage than when we had a presentation back in, what was that, 19 or 20? 20, I think.
About 2020, I think.
Yeah.
I think it may have started before that, but.
Right. We had someone from FDNY come in. He spoke about the storage units, battery storage. I'm concerned with any size, not just a large scale. And I'd like to see there were some issues over in Orange, and John feels he could reach out to some people. So I'd like to also, once we get this, have come back maybe October, we could set up for the work session about having a presentation for the fire safety in particular. So can I have a motion to refer out? the
Yeah, I have
moratorium?
just one
Yeah.
question for Adam on the proposed law on top of page 3. The moratorium is clearly
Yeah.
for battery storage facilities. It makes it very clear. Why is the need on, it says notwithstanding the foregoing, which deals with the battery storage, special permits and site plan applications for large-scale solar systems may be reviewed, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Oh, it's a typo. My apologies. It should read, battery energy storage systems. 1 second.
Oh, okay.
I can fix that. Hold on.
Good catch, Susan.
Yeah.
Let me pull it up.
Yeah, it's at the very top of the third page.
Hold on. Yeah, Diane, I'll make the tweak and just send it to you.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, all right.
All right, so can I have a motion to refer out both the battery storage and the solar moratorium?
No,
Oh, wait.
no.
Wait.
We didn't talk about the solar,
Which one do you?
Talking about your
just the battery storage.
Okay.
Just-
All right, so solar moratorium, we have some changes that were put out to be referred. Adam,
I have issues with that.
okay,
I'm not pleased with that draft, and I'd like a board discussion about changes to it.
Okay.
We need a board discussion, because I think there are other issues that I would like to see if we're going to amend that law again. I think this would be the third time we'd be amending it.
What are your issues, Susan?
Okay. I have issues on it talks about residential structure in terms of the setback. I think we have an issue between residential structure and residential property line, which has come up at a planning board meeting, and I think that I'd like a board discussion about that. I think it also, picking up, I listened to the comments in March of '22 when we had the last hearing on the last set of amendments. There were a lot of comments made by the public. I was one, but there were others, okay, who had a lot of concerns, and none of them were addressed in the amendments. The whole issue of trees and comparing the value of the function of trees compared to the value of the carbon sequestration issue. Because right now, the way the law is written, it only looks at the carbon sequestration number. There should be a comparison between the value of trees and the value of the solar. It is a difficult balance. We have two.
What do you mean by value?
Is there
The functions of trees. Trees,
Whose experience are we deciding what the value is?
trees have value. Okay,
Okay, but-
they did add a line that says you should assess the value of, you should talk about the function of trees. But it doesn't say you should compare the loss of the function. If you're cutting down 1,000 trees, you're losing those
But you
functions.
have to insert some empirical guidelines.
Yes.
That's the issue there. We talk about function of trees, but you need empirical things to make comparisons that make sense.
No,
I'm going to
Well,
start with that.
I think maybe not everything has to be empirical. If you can talk about your,
Then it's subject to opinion,
Yeah.
well, a lot of.
which has no business in a law.
Buffering. It's
100 feet.
buffering.
Always.
What is visual?
Okay.
Screening is
Buff-
subjective.
The buffering in there is defined now, as is screening.
Yeah, and that
I'm
that
just
is
saying,
subjective.
Susan, I'm suggesting that, I understand what you're saying, and I did hear those comments, and I'm not diminishing those comments, and I'm not diminishing the fact that trees and forests do have a value to us, and they do have function, but I haven't found yet, through my entire experience with the writing of the latest tree law, that the function has been defined in empirical ways that you can actually come up with a value that you can compare to something. It just hasn't been there yet. If we find it, happy to have it. And if there is a formula, so to speak, of defining the function of the trees, we should do it. I agree with that, but I haven't found that
then
yet.
maybe we have to do a little bit more looking, because I'm not an expert on this, so I'd have to look and I'd have to talk to people who know this. That's one issue. The other issue that I'd like addressed is the percentage of lot coverage. It's 80%. I think it should be less, okay? I don't have a number, but I think that's something that we should discuss. And I'd like to review other legislation in other towns like Yorktown, okay? Not upstate New York, not for farmland. So that's an issue. At last night's planning board meeting, the applicant was talking about setback and then a buffer setback. And I think our law only talks about a setback. It doesn't talk about a buffer setback. So I was a little confused.
I think they're a little.
Or they were confused.
Yeah,
Because it's only a setback.
Right. I think they were talking about that they left existing buffer, whereas before they were taking,
Okay.
removing trees.
They were making a big to-do
They
about
were
it.
removing more trees, for the shading aspects of it, et cetera, but now they left more. I think that's what they were talking about. But you're right, there's no buffer setback.
Okay.
There's a setback,
Okay.
period.
And then a very fundamental issue with the solar law that I have, which I think I would like to discuss with the board. Right now, it's any residential district, 5 acres or more, okay, by special permit. Because this large-scale solar farms are basically an industrial use, a commercial use, call it whatever, whichever term you want. It's not a residential use. To me, this is a rezoning because you are drastically changing the use of the property, okay? And I think the board should look at this as a rezoning on a parcel-by-parcel basis. It may be very suitable for some places. I had no problem with Hemlock Hill Farm, Arcadia, the other one on 134, where it was basically pasture land that wasn't being used. But I have an issue cutting down 1,000 trees in a residential neighborhood. If you go down Foothill, it's a disaster. It's an absolutely disaster when you see what they did there, okay? I don't think it belongs there. And I think if we look at it and stop this, eliminate the special permit and go back to a rezoning, and I'd like to see other legislation from other municipalities that deals with it differently. To me, these are fundamental issues that I think I'd like to see rediscussed with the board. These are my opinions. I think other people in the community share them, but we've had no board discussion. All this new law does is tweak the setback.
The moratorium was because, a lot of it was because of Foothill.
But this doesn't resolve issues that have been.
Diana, how much longer do we have on the moratorium before it expires?
September 30th, and you have
Yeah,
to
I
do
believe
this.
it's September.
This has been dragging on for 6 months.
Thank you, Susan.
and now-
Can I
and now
ask some
you-
questions without being criticized?
Sure.
Thank you. We're trying to get this through.
Yeah.
You're telling me to hold it now. So we could put it out for referral. We could get some of these ideas and get them addressed, which is part of what I'd like to do, and not hold it up. And you're more than welcome to talk to staff about that. I definitely agree that you can't put something that's such a random value that you can't prove empirically, that you can't have any type of numbers that say yes or no. So that,
And Supervisor, excuse me, I'm sorry. And Supervisor, I just sent you the Somers Solar Code.
Yes.
And I'll find 3 more that are local, and Susan, I'll print them out and hand deliver them to you.
I
And none
appreciate
of
that.
them discuss the value of the trees.
No, and I would imagine not, because there's not, how do you look at the value? And then, you don't even know, when you look at empirical value, is this gonna provide electric from something that's running on natural gas? Is this gonna provide electric from something that's running on coal? Because that would change everything. You don't know what it's replacing, so it's hard to look at. But I do know that, the way we look at things, and and we've had this problem before with balance, that sometimes to move forward with renewables, there's a cost to it, and some of that cost is trees, some of that cost is open space and land, and there are other options too on top of buildings that don't have such a cost. But we lost Indian Point. We are pushing towards more and more battery-operated things that are going to take electricity. And, I made the comment before, we had someone who was against the gas pipeline and someone who was against solar. And it's like, well, where are we going then? If we don't have natural gas, we don't have the solar, we don't want coal, we closed our nuclear. So we have to look at it responsibly and make sure. Now, if there's an issue with the setback and the visual, I know we've extended the acreage to 5 acres. I don't think there are a lot of properties that would even count.
I would have to go through, for some reason, I think we've upped it to 10.
You're right, actually, we did.
We did.
So 10-acre lots. So there are a lot of things that have already been there.
And we increased the setback.
Yeah, we increased it,
Yeah,
double the
deal with it.
setback.
So financially,
And you have to deal with the issue of the residential structure or the residential property line,
Well,
which is a
that's-
very significant issue
Sure.
out of the Dell project, okay?
And
Especially
that's-
since a 10-acre residential property could eventually be subdivided, and then if you subdivide it, and then you're gonna be back up to
It's something we could definitely look at, Adam.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and see if we
I mean,
get any
that-
other
that-
comments. Now that that's there, please bring that through the proper.
Or can't we just clean up that verbiage? Maybe it doesn't have to be said that way.
Huh? Yeah,
Maybe
no,
we change the verbiage.
absolutely.
It's not
And,
said that way.
Well, but,
and this is part of putting it out for referral.
oh, yeah.
That's what you were gonna say?
Yeah, yeah,
So
no.
there's still the desire
I
to
need a lawyer.
screen
I know it all.
from
Oh, of course, you still
residential,
have to screen it,
from
exactly.
residential neighbors, right?
Oh, screening is important. Fully screened.
Okay.
Fully screened. That's, what does fully screened mean?
I think it's defined
It means you
now.
can't see them.
So you don't see it, okay?
I think
We've had
John-
that discussion.
John, I think you did a great job last night, and you told him it's zero.
Right.
Zero, you know, he did it perfectly on a thing, zero, because they had sight line like this, he goes, no, bring the sight line up to the highest solar panel. That's zero, it's
Yeah,
100% screening.
Right, that's what you're going for, that's what you hope to achieve, but you must understand that you cannot achieve it in every case because of grade differentials, okay?
And that's something that's not reflected. I
Yes,
don't
it
know
is.
if in the law, does it reflect the grade?
Yes, it does.
I-
Yeah, there's a
It's-
paragraph in
I
there,
thought
which
it
I'm
was
sure
like
that will be, you know,
Get some
discussing
input.
the wording of it, but it's in there, so it's beginning to be addressed. You know, the Hill property, for instance, of course you can see them because there's a grade differential, but you're seeing them from Route 6 from the commercial area, which has a different standard. So I think we just have to remember what we've set up for ourselves. The residential, of course, you don't want the neighborhood to change. You want it to be screened. You want it to be able to exist and produce the electricity, but you don't want to change the neighborhood. It's about the character of it, so.
Putting an
But
industrial use.
in certain instances, there will be grade differentials that make it nearly impossible. Down on the Kitchen One farm, their next door neighbor farm is up on the hill. It's never gonna screen it from there. And so should we stop that one? You know, there has to be some modification in there that acknowledges what we've learned as we had the first few come through. I think.
Adam, will we have the opportunity to extend this moratorium if we vote on that?
Well, you have to. There's no other way.
Well,
Say it again.
Is what-
Well, I mean, we'd have to introduce legislation to do that, and we'd have to get it down for public hearing, yeah. But you can do that, sure.
to extend?
Yeah.
We need a public hearing for that?
Yeah.
Okay,
So if on,
so we're probably gonna have to look at that for September.
Well, it depends what time, when we can notice the public hearing for this piece of legislation. If we can do that before the moratorium expires, it's not necessary.
Well, if you're going to revamp that legislation, you're going to have to do that first. So are we going to refer out what we have now and have comments come back, and then you'll have a work session to discuss them, and then make more changes? And then you'll have your draft law to send out and base your public hearing on.
Right, I think we run out of time.
Yeah, you're
Well,
gonna
if
have
you
to
do it that
extend
way, you would. I mean, I'm not, the question is, do you want to do it that way? I don't think you have to. I don't know that you, but yes, if you're going to do it that way, you would presumably run out of time, and we would have to, you know, have a public hearing on extending the moratorium, and then going through the process simultaneously on the side, parallel processes.
why don't you,
So we can do both, basically. We can set the public hearing to do a extension of the moratorium and also put this in the progress also.
Yeah, or you can just refer it out, schedule the public hearing, get whatever comments you're gonna have. You may or may not wanna make changes, right? And you can have both pieces of legislation though, I think, like Diana's saying, so that you're still on track.
And quite frankly, you can probably put this on for the second work session in September and still have time to pass whatever you want to pass by the end of the month.
but if you don't want to pass any version of this current one, you'd have to extend the moratorium.
And
So
then we still have enough time to pass the extension. Yes.
Okay,
when would you have to advertise if you were going to have to do an extension on the moratorium?
10 days out before it ended. I would say that's when we should put it in.
Let's try to do it instead of looking for an
So
extension.
so that public hearing would have to be, what's the third meeting in September? What's the date on that?
20th.
So work backwards. If
yeah,
you needed the extension, you'd have to have the public
17th,
hearing
sorry,
on the 17th.
17th.
You'd have to advertise it, then we'd have to
The town
advertise.
board can call another meeting on the 24th if they want to, so you have
Or
plenty
any-
of
or any
options.
day that
We can
week.
do any
Right.
time. So they have plenty of options to be able to do that.
If you needed the time, all right.
Okay, so can I have a motion to put out the battery storage moratorium and the solar moratorium for referral?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
The solar moratorium?
No, the
Oh, so I'm
revised
sorry,
solar
it's written
law.
as solar moratorium, yes, revised solar law. Thank you, John.
And you'll make the change in the battery law.
I did already.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. And then, Adam, I think at our next work session, we also need to look at the vape and what we're doing there.
Yeah, I mean, we've been working on, revisions to the code, and presumably we'll have them for the next meeting to,
For which code?
well, the zoning code at large, really, but to deal with vapes and other tobacco-related.
Oh, the vaping thing, that's also ending September 30th, so where's that local law?
That's what we
we're
just
talking
asked him about.
Oh, I wasn't,
Was it?
it sounded like you were talking general zoning code.
No, I specifically vape in the moratorium.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear
So-
that word then.
So we'll look at that, and
So
we might have to
when
refer
will
that.
that law be given
Well,
to
we're,
us?
we're looking to have it for the next work session.
Which is the second meeting of September.
Yep.
When does that give us time for a public hearing before the
Sa-
moratorium
The
ends?
same way that we'll have for the solar.
Wow.
It looks like we'll be doing a meeting sometime during the fourth week of September, that's all,
Okay,
which is what you were asking for before, so it's all good.
well, yeah, I'm sorry to say this, but I wish that this could have been done in June or July.
Yeah,
Yeah, so we didn't have this last-
there were some mitigating factors, and you know what, it is what it is, and we're moving it, and that's where we'll be.
Okay.
And I don't have no problem with an extra meeting if we need to. Don't kick me.
Just you.
Yeah,
All right.
yes.
So, let's
We'll
get,
make
let's,
a master plan for all the public hearings and stuff, and we'll go over them.
all right, I appreciate that. Maybe we could sit over that this week, or Monday. So we have some resolutions. We're going to accept the resignation received from Kevin Harrigan from the Sewer Department effective August 16th, 2024. We are going to accept the resignation received from Kenneth Belfour as Chair of the Community Housing Board.
Do we have to?
No.
I
No,
guess so.
no, actually, I have a resolution or proclamation saying that Ken is appointed for life. Ken, could you come up to the podium there? I know, and it says it in here.
Just making sure.
Proclamation on this 13th day of August 2024. Whereas a community draws its spirit, strength, and values from the concern and commitment of all individuals and organizations who volunteer their service to its residents, a strength measured in community pride that has enabled Yorktown to grow and prosper. Whereas volunteering defines America and brings people together, uniting us around our common belief in the dignity and equality of every person and giving us a chance to learn from others we might otherwise never meet. And whereas Kenneth Belfour was first appointed to the Yorktown Community Housing Board on August 16th, 1994. It would have been earlier, but he was celebrating the Rangers winning the Stanley Cup. And filled a leadership position soon thereafter. Although he's resigning as chair, Ken will continue to share his experience and knowledge as a member of the board. And now therefore be it resolved that I, Edward A. Lachterman, along with the town board, ask all present to join in congratulating and honoring Kenneth Belfour on this special occasion. Well, I was gonna let Ken speak first, but go on, Maura. Go on, Maura.
Before Ken speaks, I know it's a little unusual. Thank you for letting me speak. I joined the Housing Board around 1996, so Ken had been on the board for a couple of years at that point, and he became the leader shortly thereafter. So we've been through a lot together. That whole history, most of it we went through together. And I can tell you that even tonight, I passed him a note after he spoke to you guys. I learned so much listening to Ken. He knows so much. He's a vast reservoir of knowledge and of leadership for all of us who have been on the housing board in all of these long years. And I'm so glad he's going to stay on the housing board because we really need everything that he has to give. And I want to personally thank him for the leadership that he's given and how much he's taught me about affordable housing. I'm glad that you guys recognize how precious a resource Ken is to this town.
We're blessed to have him, honestly. That reservoir joke in there too, I picked up on it. I picked up on your reservoir joke, Mr. Water Guy.
First of all, thank you very much for accepting my resignation.
No, we haven't voted yet, Ken.
Because if you don't, I'm going to have problems when I go home tonight from my wife, who's been pressuring me to do this for a decade or more. But it's been a real honor to serve the town in this capacity. Having had a career in affordable housing, I felt that I brought a particular expertise from that to this role. It has been difficult and frustrating in many ways because I came on after the town had sort of adopted this affordable housing program, and it's been downhill ever since. Well, I'm exaggerating a little bit. It hasn't been steadily downhill, but it's the town took a number of steps forward, kind of leaping ahead of a lot of other communities, and then there was a reaction to that within the community, and the town took a lot of steps backwards, and now is, in some ways behind other communities. But Yorktown has a lot to be proud of. Very, very early on, we, certainly decades before I was involved, we developed Beaver Ridge and Underhill Apartments. Those were both low-income housing right here in the center of Yorktown Heights. So the town wasn't afraid of that then, and it didn't destroy the town by having this here. And there's been so much developed since, and I'm pleased to have served, and I'm very happy to be able to continue to serve and support the members of the Housing Board and the person that I hope you'll select as the new chair. Thank you.
Well, Ken, thank you. I have to say, I believe in community service as well, as you know. And I think that it's a great unifier. It's really what binds our community together. We don't always see eye to eye. You have been an absolute gentleman every time we've met and talked and gone through things, and you're open to conversation, which, as Maura pointed out, I learn more and more every time we have a conversation. And I think you had like a 2-minute talk in my office that lasted about 25, and you give such value. You're such a valuable resource for our community, but not only in your knowledge base, in that leadership, as was pointed out, in that unity, in that binding. There are, and I think this is just so important, and it's something that nowadays is lost more than ever. This isn't politics. This is community. This is being of a mindset of wanting to do the best for your community. And I think that, sitting on the board now 9 years almost, and especially in my new role as supervisor, I see so much static that gets in the way of that. But you've always been a beacon of light towards let's do what's right. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate our relationship over these years and what you bring to the table. And you will be sorely missed in your leadership role, but I think that having Sarah Wilson, she also has been quite the community leader and has always been, once again, it's unity towards conversation. It's not a political issue. It's what do you feel? And there's respect for each other's feelings, and I think that's huge. So once again, I congratulate you on all of your years of service. I say you had your chance, but you're still staying on. That's all on you. But I'm definitely not upset about that.
Thank you, and I'm going to sow a seed on something related but not related, and that's that at least one prior supervisor, it may have been more than a decade ago, I don't know, but held a volunteer recognition event here at Town Hall for all the different town board volunteers on, planning, zoning, all the conservation, all the various boards. And I think, I certainly appreciate the recognition now, but I think that with everything that so many volunteers do that make this town a great place, you may want to consider doing something like that again.
Was that done as a meeting or something just separate with like refreshments and all?
Separate with refreshments.
Oh, Linda did it? Okay. That's a wonderful idea. See, Ken, you're still leading. Anyone want to?
Yeah, I've only been here less than a year, and I've gotten to know you in that year, and the knowledge that I've learned in your leadership has been incredible. And you know what? I am so happy that you're handing it off to Sarah. I've gotten to know Sarah in the last couple months, and I don't think anybody in the town, minimizes what you do, in that capacity. And I think everybody, wants to see that housing thrive here in all different diverse, structures. And, the presentation you put on tonight was phenomenal. It was very good, So, and you're handed off to Sarah, and it's going to be good.
And
you guys need to expand your board a little bit more than 4.
Yeah. I hear Sarah committed to doubling your time in.
And your salary.
Yes.
But congratulations, honestly,
Thanks.
Susan?
Ken, I love the idea of throwing something for everyone who volunteers. I think that's really what it's all about. It's about the volunteers. But I do want to just take a moment and honor all the different hats that you wear for Yorktown. And my time getting to know all the different hats. You're significant and you matter, and the efforts that you've put in have made a huge impact in this community. And although you are passing the baton, I think you're pretty legendary, and this is where your legacy is, and I'm just really proud to be part of it.
Thank you.
Susan?
I've known Ken for many years. I worked with him on the first set-aside law, okay? I'd like to work with you again on a second set-aside law, and the town board has not yet decided how we're reshuffling the liaisons to the advisory boards, but I would very much like to serve as liaison to your board and see if I can assist you in any way. And I thank you and Nora and Sarah and your other member who's not here, and I hope we can recruit more members to take some of the burden off the 4 of you. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Hold on. Did you want to say anything, Diana?
No, because we're going to continue to work together anyway. So, and we've certainly enjoyed helping the community housing board. So we'll continue to do that.
I've been sitting too long. Here's a proclamation, Ken. Thank you so much for your service and continued service.
Take a picture. Picture of Sarah taking a picture.
You got Luciana in the background.
Oh, I missed you, Luch. Actually, I probably got her on TV.
All right, and
Oh, don't make me
You still have
cry.
to get more resolutions because we have to
Yep,
get to
one
Sarah.
more resolution. I don't know, Ken, if I don't read this next one.
You can go home and
Appoint
talk to-
Sarah Wilson as chair of the Community Housing Board, effective September, well, actually, these are supposed to be effective September 1st, 2024, but I don't think you have a meeting scheduled before then. All right, so we're good there. And can I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Now you're off the hook, Ken. And we'll take a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Good night, Yorktown.